Chapter 873. I don't know about this either. Zhong Yalan replied faintly. 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to escape from Dingming. After I came back, I didn't like to get involved in government affairs. It's actually quite good to stay here. Her happiness was obvious. She had everything a woman should have. What else could she not be satisfied with? At this time, very light footsteps sounded on the grass outside. Zhong Yalan smiled again. Yang is back. The person who came in was indeed head of state Wen Yang. He was the same as 3 years ago. Almost no changes could be seen. Dressed in a suit and leather shoes, he looked refined, his steps were steady, and his bearing was calm. His clothes were always the most fitting, his temperament was always the most unique, and his smile was always the most infectious. If he had not experienced the conspiracy of the Hidden Front, Ding Ming would definitely have thought that this was head of state Wen Yang himself. Seeing Wen Yang walk into the living room, Zhong Yalan did not care about the presence of outsiders like Ji Qinxue. She ran up to Wen Yang happily and hugged him. The two even kissed very sweetly. They looked very loving. Qi Yuan and Mo Xiaoxiao behind Wen Yang were full of envy. Ji Qinxue could not help but laugh. Are you deliberately showing off your love in front of us? Wen Yang let go of Zhong Yalan and smiled. Qinxue, long time no see. He had obviously received Qi Yuan's report. He said to the transit string, Manager Ling, welcome to my place. The transit string was very humble. Manager 1, it's a great honor. Wen Yang looked at Ding Ming, who looked like a black iron tower. Welcome. The previous 2 people had called him by name. When it came to Ding Ming, he did not. Obviously, the ancestral Graygon's status was not enough. Ding Ming did not mind. He was just secretly observing the head of state. Wen Yang didn't stand on ceremony. He actually went into the kitchen alone and started cooking. Soon, a rich aroma wafted out from the kitchen. For a moment, the transit string sighed with emotion. It would be a lie to say that she didn't envy Zhong Yalan. The dishes were the most classic Western food, steak salad, soup, and red wine. Wen Yang and Zhong Yalan sat together at the white and elegant long dining table. Wen Yang cut the steak and fed it to Zhong Yalan. Zhong Yalan enjoyed it indescribably. Looking at the plate in front of him, Ding Ming was not in a hurry to pick up the food. His expression was thoughtful. The transit string asked curiously, Chairman Zhu, why aren't you eating? Ding Ming said expressionlessly, because this thing can't be eaten. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. Wen Yang narrowed his eyes. He looked at Ding Ming meaningfully. At this moment, Ji Qinshue's expression was filled with shock. It was as if she had just witnessed the most miraculous scene. She couldn't see anything at all with her true sight. Her telekinesis vision was blinded. This ordinary-looking Chairman Zhu was actually an experienced psychic, and he even cultivated applied telekinesis. Wen Yang did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, Does the ancestral Graygon have a bad appetite? Ding Ming revealed a strange smile. I've always had a good appetite. It's a pity that I can't eat this dinner. Qi Yuan was a little angry. How dare you? This is the head of state's house. Please watch your words and actions. Ding Ming picked up the bottle of red wine and gently poured a little into the goblet. He didn't say anything. Instead, he tightened his grip on the goblet, and the bright red wine evaporated into white steam. It was obvious that the wine had evaporated. Suddenly, Ding Ming's palm glowed with white light. The transparent crystal cup was covered with a layer of dense blue dots. These blue dots couldn't be seen with the naked eye. However, everyone present was an expert. Their eyesight was quite amazing. Very soon, they saw through the trick. The transit string said in surprise, Poison. No. Ding Ming shook his head. Ji Qinshuo was curious. Then what is it? Ding Ming stared at the blue dots. This is a type of enhancement medicine. It's produced from the petals of the magical apple before it bears fruit. Before it was refined by the magical lake, it was transported to the Federal Empire. It's an extremely rare medicinal ingredient that is extremely difficult to obtain on the market. It's harmless to the human body. The transit string also narrowed his eyes. Then what does it do? Ding Ming suddenly looked up. You drank some wine just now. Do you think the head of state is more pleasing to the eye? The transit string was generous. It's just an illusion. Compared to when Mr. Wen came in, I think he's more handsome. Ding Meng explained. This medicine is a catalyst that slightly stimulates the secretion of the chemical PEA and phenylethylamine in the human body. It makes you feel good about the opposite sex around you. Drinking a little wine is fine, but if you drink it for a long time, you'll be deeply attracted to this person. You'll even love them to death. The transit string and Ji Qinxue stopped talking. They turned to look at Wen Yang. Zhong Yalan was dumbfounded, but Wen Yang was very calm. He looked at Ding Meng with a deep gaze. Ding Meng looked at Zhong Yalan again. Madam, how many months are you pregnant? These words were quite rude. Qi Yuan and Mo Xiao Xiao were about to move, but Wen Yang waved his hand lightly. Let him continue. Zhong Yalan's face had a hint of anger. Please be aware of your status. Ding Meng slowly stood up and looked at the paintings hanging on the walls of the living room. Most of them were photos of Wen Yang and his wife. These murals should have been made in the past 3 years, right? Zhong Yalan also stood up and asked coldly, What are you trying to say? Ding Meng said, At first, I couldn't figure it out. But when I came here, I figured everything out. The living room was originally filled with a happy and peaceful atmosphere, but because of Ding Meng's words, a shadow fell over everyone's hearts. Ding Meng said, 3 years ago, General Cheng Yufeng sent you back to the Empire after you were seriously injured. During your battle with Ding Meng, your origin energy index of 20 billion was crippled, and you fell from the warlord level to the warlord level. If it were a normal person, it would probably take at least 100 years to heal, but you're different. You're the head of state's wife, and you're also the pearl of the apocalypse. You have the best resources in the Empire. I estimate that you'll be able to recover in about a year. Zhong Yalan was shocked. How do you know so much? Ding Meng continued. While you're healing, the head of state definitely can't touch you. I'm guessing that he'll definitely stay by your side and take care of you in every possible way. He might even inject energy into you and raise your cultivation. Don't you think that head of state Wen Yang's attitude towards you has changed after he came back 3 years ago? Is he more passionate? Zhong Yalan said calmly. Husband and wife have experienced life and death together. It's only natural that they cherish their relationship. Ding Meng asked in return, But what about after you've recovered? Isn't he being too passionate? For example, during your married life? For example, during your first time in the past 3 years? Zhong Yalan was furious. Nonsense. Get him out of here right now. Ding Meng's gaze was like a knife. Think about it carefully. Think about whether or not I'm talking nonsense. Zhong Yalan suddenly calmed down. She realized that what Ding Meng said was not wrong. On the night when she recovered from her injury, Wen Yang was indeed very passionate. He had sex with her a total of 7 times. It could be said that he wanted to die. It was even more charming than their wedding night. Since then, Wen Yang had sex with her almost every night. Wen Yang's interest in her made her feel shy and happy. This was indeed very different from 3 years ago. Seeing Zhong Yalan's face alternating between red and white, Ji Qinxue and the transit string knew that Ding Meng was not spouting nonsense. Ding Meng stared at her. 3 years ago, Chancellor Wen Yang was good at government affairs and focused on his career. His relationship with you was actually very bland. He only went home a few times a month. But in the past 3 years, Chancellor Wen Yang has completely changed. He doesn't care about government affairs and focuses on you. He has to go home every day. He even cooks for you personally. Isn't this a little too abnormal? Zhong Yalan argued. What's abnormal about it? It's natural for a married couple to have ups and downs in their relationship. Ding Meng sneered. But you're already more than 3 months pregnant. Why don't you dare announce this news? Zhong Yalan said. This is a private matter between us. It's not convenient for us to announce it to the public. Ding Meng said, Then why are you deliberately wearing loose clothes to cover your belly? At the same time, your dress is attached with a special energy that prevents others from looking into it. Why is that? You want to go to the tasting convention to find treasures, but you're afraid of exposing yourself in public. So, you asked these 2 secretaries to run errands for you. Do you think this is reasonable? Zhong Yalan was speechless. Ji Qinxue and the transit string both had looks of disbelief on their faces. What Ding Meng said was simply too shocking. However, what was even more shocking was yet to come. Ding Meng said in a low voice, "It's not that it's not convenient for you to announce it to the public. I think this is what Chancellor Wenyang wants." Zhong Yalan refused to answer. Silence usually meant consent. Ding Meng said, "Because you're the Chancellor's wife. Once the news of your pregnancy is made known to the outside world, the entire Norse Empire will know within a short period of time. Even the Federation and outer space will hear about it. To put it simply, the whole world will know. If the real Chancellor Wenyang finds out about this, the consequences will be unimaginable." Zhong Yalan looked shocked. Even Ji Qinxue and the transit string could not sit still. They stood up in shock. The transit string looked at Wenyang and then at Ding Meng. "You." Ding Meng nodded and turned his gaze to Wenyang. "Yes, he's not the real Chancellor Wenyang. He's just an imposter." Ji Qinxue raised his eyebrows slightly. "What proof do you have?" Ding Meng said, "Do you know why I took the risk to activate my telekinesis in front of you? It's because my telekinesis level is much higher than yours. I can see a lot of things that you can't." Ji Qinxue also had a look of disbelief on his face. No one present would believe what Ding Meng said. Zhong Yalan shouted angrily, "You're deluding everyone with your lies." "Nonsense." Wenyang did not interrupt. Only now did he say, "Continue." Ding Meng smiled. "Do you know where your biggest flaw is?" Wenyang frowned. "My flaw," Ding Meng said, "you can play tricks on the hidden front, but as the Chancellor of the Norse Empire, you don't know anything about running a country or managing an army. I don't think the withdrawal of the fertile chalk system was even your idea. It was the idea of a few generals working together to force you to implement the war plan as soon as possible. Unfortunately, you don't understand these things. General Gong Ping, who was supposed to help you, has also disappeared. Plus, you've been indulging in your wife's beauty every day. The Norse Empire is in its current situation because you're a fake chancellor." Chapter 874. Silence. Absolute silence. The luxurious living room suddenly felt like a graveyard, devoid of all life. Wenyang's gaze finally sharpened, as if he wanted to cut Ding Meng open with a knife. After some time, he finally spoke calmly. "Who exactly are you?" Ding Meng's body blurred, revealing his true form. The transit string was both surprised and delighted. "Ding Meng, you're still alive." Zhong Yalan staggered back in shock. "It's you." Ji Qinxue's beautiful eyes flickered. "I've always felt that Chairman Zhu's aura was a little different from ordinary people. I didn't expect it to be Mr. Ding Meng himself." Ding Meng smiled. He knew that his disguise could hide him from telekinesis and perception, but it couldn't withstand the analysis and scrutiny of these experts. Wenyang wrapped an arm around Zhong Yalan's waist and said with concern, "Don't worry, Yalan. I'm here." Zhong Yalan calmed down when she felt her man's broad embrace. She turned her head and said, "Ding Meng, you audacious bastard. Have you forgotten what I said to you back at the Hidden Front space station? If you let me go, I'll make you regret it one day. I didn't expect you to walk right into my trap today." Ding Meng smiled. "Madam, don't be in such a hurry. It's still too early to tell who is the prey and who is the prey." As he spoke, he turned on his wristband and brought up a display of personal information. The information of a handsome man was displayed on it. Lin Fei, male, 48 years old, missing person from the Norse Empire. "Who is he?" asked the transit string curiously. Ding Meng's gaze was as sharp as a sword, slowly but firmly pointed at Wenyang. Zhong Yalan's expression turned fearful once more. She looked at Wenyang and backed away step by step. Ding Meng said, "Because only this person's identity can explain all the strange phenomena. Madam, you should be the one who can figure it out the best." Zhong Yalan's teeth were chattering as she asked in disbelief, You? Are you really him?" Wenyang remained calm even at this moment. "Yalan, do you think I'm an imposter? Is my affection for you an act?" Zhong Yalan was speechless. It was obvious that she had fallen into a state of half-believing and half-doubting. The Wenyang in front of her was indeed the real chancellor. No matter how she looked at it, it did not seem fake. However, the chancellor's abnormal behavior seemed to be that of the lunatic Lin Fei who had once pursued her. Because only someone like Lin Fei who had been possessed by the devil, could fit Ding Meng's reasoning. He won't admit it. Ding Meng interrupted her thoughts. Ji Qinshue's eyes flickered. Why? Ding Meng sighed. He has already paid an unimaginable price to get to where he is today. What he has now is something that he will never give up. When Yang stared at Ding Meng again, anger shooting out of his eyes. You still have no evidence to prove that your point of view is correct. Am I right? Ding Meng sneered. That's right. I don't have any evidence to prove that you are an imposter, but I have evidence to prove that the real Chancellor Wen Yang is still alive. Wen Yang was surprised. Oh, at this moment, light footsteps could be heard from the grass outside. The door was quickly pushed open, and two young men in suits walked in. These two people were actually Luo Anfu and Zhong Lifeng. However, the two of them no longer had a cheerful expression on their faces. Instead, they had serious expressions on their faces. When Zhong Lifeng saw Ding Meng, who had already revealed his true identity, he could not help but be curious. How did you discover me? Ding Meng said, I knew that there was something wrong with you last night, but I did not see your true face. It was only when I activated my telekinesis that I realized that you were also an imposter. Zhong Lifeng was expressionless. I don't seem to have revealed any flaws, right? Ding Meng laughed bitterly. You didn't reveal anything, but I was careless. In order to avoid being exposed prematurely, he had not activated his telekinesis vision, nor had he activated his origin. He had completely relied on his primitive perception and experience to judge. The only time he had activated his origin energy was last night in General Ross's villa. Logically speaking, he had accurately controlled the range of his fluctuations. Zhong Lifeng and Luo Anfu, who were at the foot of the mountain, had no way of knowing. The problem was that as soon as I left the mountain, you seemed to know which direction I was going to come from. You had been waiting outside the car for a long time. At that time, Luo Anfu was dozing off in the car. How did you know so accurately? Ding Meng explained. Zhong Lifeng nodded. I knew that you were going to deal with Ross. I was also taking a risk. I was betting that you would not dare to activate your origin energy after making your move. That was why I dared to wait. Ding Meng muttered to himself and said, How did you discover me? Zhong Lifeng said, I have been waiting for you in the capital, but I have only just arrived a month ago. Ding Meng said in surprise, Oh, you were waiting for me? Zhong Lifeng suddenly revealed an aura of absolute confidence. Back then, we spent so much effort to find the base of the hidden front, but we were unable to find it. You, on the other hand, were able to find it so quickly. By the same logic, this fake head of state is extremely cunning. I have been here for a month, but I still could not find his whereabouts. If there is anyone who has the ability to dig out the real hiding place of the fake head of state, then that person can only be you. Ding Meng pondered for a moment and said, I admire you. Zhong Lifeng waved his hand and said, I knew from the very beginning that you were an imposter. Ding Meng was even more surprised. How did you know? Zhong Lifeng said, because Lord Fifth told me that you have a top hacker in your camp. This person is very resourceful and can almost rampage through the International Space Network. Recently, Lord Fifth discovered that the hacker has been active again. He stole a large amount of private information from the Empire's official database. In the end, he extracted the information of 5 people in detail, and after distinguishing them, he found that they were all going to the same place, which was the official residence of Xingwu City. I studied Ancestral Gragon's information and found that this person is actually a deputy who is going to report to the Congress. I think that this person is most likely impersonated by you. Even if it's not you, it's someone you sent. Anyway, no matter who he is, he can't be Ancestral Gragon himself. Ding Meng sighed in admiration. So you have been waiting for me in the administration area for a long time? Zhong Lifeng sighed. I was not simply waiting. I also paid a huge price to impersonate you. At the same time, I also had to ensure that Apocalypse and Feng Yin did not value the Starbao Corporation. Only then did I have the chance to impersonate this person. As he spoke, he wiped his face with his hand. After a burst of black smoke, his real body finally appeared. Who else could this person be other than Wen Yang? However, Ding Meng's heart kept sinking. Ji Qinshue's gaze was also filled with deep thought. At this moment, Zhong Yalan, Qi Yuan, and Mo Xiaoxiao were all dumbfounded. The two princes were exactly the same. There was no way to tell the real one from the fake one. However, one thing was certain. Ding Meng was not spouting nonsense. One of them was definitely the fake princes. Wen Yang took 2 steps forward and faced the princes. Do you remember what I said to you on Rainforest Planet 1? The princes said, What did you say? I'm guessing that you've forgotten. Wen Yang stared at him and said proudly, You're just an underground organization from outer space, yet you're trying to make decisions for the upper echelons of the Empire. This is something that has never happened before in the history of the Empire. It won't happen now, and it will never happen in the future. The facts have also proven that you can't govern a country or command an army. Just as Ding Meng said, you're just a venomous snake hiding in the dark, unable to see the light of day. Other than knowing how to scheme, you're completely useless. His words were powerful and filled with righteousness. The confidence, aura, and dignity of a leader seemed to have returned to him. This situation was exactly the same as what had happened on Rainforest Planet 3 years ago. However, this time, the roles were reversed. Wen Yang had the upper hand. The princes laughed coldly. Do you think that you can take back what you've lost? I'm the true princes of the Empire. Yalan is my wife, and she even has the fruit of our love. How dare a fake princess like you act so impudently in front of me? Qi Yuan, Xiao, take down these 2 highly dangerous fugitives of the Empire. This was a very insidious move. Zhong Yalan was very likely Wen Yang's Achilles heel, giving him the most fatal blow at the most critical moment. Wen Yang looked at him coldly. They won't move. Qi Yuan and Mo Xiaoxiao really didn't move at all. They stared at this scene in shock. They had completely lost their minds. This bizarre matter had already surpassed their understanding. The princes said angrily, Did the 2 of you not hear what I said? Wen Yang said, Look, even they're starting to suspect you. You've wasted the past 3 years. You can't even get the most basic trust from your subordinates. He suddenly said coldly to Qi Yuan and Mo Xiaoxiao, Impersonating the princes is a capital offense in the Empire's laws. Even your spiritual body cannot be left behind. If the 2 of you persist in going about things the wrong way, what awaits you in the future is the merciless judgment of the Supreme. Quickly come to your senses. His last sentence was practically roared out. Qi Yuan and Mo Xiaoxiao seemed to have woken up from a dream and quickly stood beside Luo Anshu. The prince's expression finally changed. Wen Yang looked straight at the princes. You've already lost. The princes said, Who said I've lost? Wen Yang said, If you're still hoping for Yuan Ta, Cheng Yufeng, Elder Zhang, Old Luo, and the others to help you, you're wrong. It's because they've gradually lost their trust in you over the past 3 years. The princes laughed coldly. Aren't you overconfident? He isn't. Ding Meng stepped forward with a solemn expression. The reason is simple. Back at the Hidden Front Space Station, General Gong Ping was personally killed by me and has long since gone to hell. Your only companion was gone 3 years ago. Naturally, General Yuan and the others no longer trust you. It can be said that you're truly isolated and helpless now. Yet, you still want to build a subspace like this to lock yourself in here. Wen Yang smiled. He thinks that this is his love nest and that no one will be able to find him. Little does he know that this is a grave that he personally dug out. He smiled very confidently. 3 years ago, on Rainforest Planet, the boss of the Hidden Front had made Wen Yang fall from his pedestal without even lifting a finger. That battle was simply a textbook classic. However, 3 years later, Wen Yang made a comeback. Similarly, he did not lift a finger and directly caused the boss of the Hidden Front to fall into a predicament. Of course, the boss of the Hidden Front was not stupid enough to think that Wen Yang and Ding Meng would dare to come straight to his door to settle scores. For them to be able to come here and stand in this room, they must have gone through a lot of calculations, made a lot of preparations, and paid a high price before they dared to come knocking on his door. Chapter 875. Seeing that the fake princeps was unwilling to bow his head, Wen Yang once again threw out his trump card. You said that you're the real princeps of the empire. Well then, let me ask you, when was my wife and I married? The princeps replied without hesitation, 23 years ago, on August 8th at 12:28 noon. He regretted it as soon as he finished answering, because he realized that Zhong Yalin's gaze had finally become fearful. Wen Yang raised his head and laughed. You think you can replace me, so you did a lot of research and preparation in advance. You are completely wrong. My wife and I had our wedding in secret in 24 years. We only decided to make it public the next year for the sake of the election. No one else knows about this except us. This was the real princeps' Achilles' heel, because this was the shared memory of Wen Yang and Zhong Yalin. To be precise, it was something that they both owned together. This was something that no third party could interfere with. The princeps gritted his teeth and said, "But so what?" Wen Yang looked at him contemptuously. "Do you know that you are very pitiful?" The princeps sneered. "Is that so?" Wen Yang said disdainfully. "I used to think that you were insidious, shrewd, and wise. I was wrong. You are simply a pitiful worm. You love someone, but you don't even dare to love her with your real face. You even pretend to be someone else. Where is your sense of existence? Is this what you mean by truly loving her? I think it's more like deceiving her. And your deception skills are not very good. Look at yourself. You don't look like the princeps of the empire at all. You're just a gigolo. Other than making women happy and being romantic, what else can you do? You even have to cook to please a woman. Look at you. Do you still have any manliness left in you?" "Shut up." The princeps finally stood up angrily. "You have no right to criticize my actions." Wen Yang raised his head and laughed out loud. He laughed so hard that he almost burst into tears. "Ha ha! As the chosen one of the imperial planet, you were better than the others in every aspect, and you were always one step ahead of the others in everything. Logically speaking, in the future, you should be an all-powerful, extraordinary hero. But now, remember, you're Wen Yang, not Lin Fei. The ruler of the empire is Wen Yang, and his wife is Zhong Yalin. You're just a clown hiding in the dark, just like how you pursued Yalin. You can't do anything, and you can't change anything. You want Yalin, but you have to use my identity. Who do you think you are? What should I call you? Brother Lin? Senior? The leader of the Hidden Front? Or a pitiful worm? If you have a little backbone, do you dare to tear off your disguise and reveal your true face? I bet Yalin will vomit when she sees you." There was no need for him to make a bet, because Zhong Yalin had already collapsed to the ground and was vomiting desperately. When she thought about how her husband, who had been with her day and night, was actually that despicable and crazy Lin Fei, and how she was pregnant with his child, she felt like vomiting her own soul out. Wen Yang's words completely destroyed the princeps' last line of psychological defense. He flew into a rage. You bastard. Ha ha. Wen Yang laughed. "Look at how weak you are. I don't even have to do anything, and you're the one who can't hold it in." The princeps' figure suddenly blurred, and he shot toward Zhong Yalin. His intention was obvious. He wanted to kidnap Zhong Yalin. The princeps of the empire and the leader of the Hidden Front were not as important as the woman he loved the most in his heart. However, he was faster than someone else. Just as his fingers were about to touch Zhong Yalin, the long dining table next to them exploded with a bang. A powerful force came crashing down like a hammer. If he tried to kidnap her, he would be hit by this force first. The princeps rolled to the side, but the hammer-like force turned into a bright white light. He did not even have time to recognize this white light. He raised his palm to the sky to block. At this time, he saw clearly that Ding Meng's pure white hand blade had struck his raised wrists. However, the hand blade itself had no attacking power. The true essence of the divine light spread all the way up his arms and directly rushed to his face. The princeps was shocked and jumped out of the window. When the stinging pain on his face disappeared, he realized that the 1,000 shadow foil and the demon's disguise technique on his face had been broken. The night was still soft and beautiful, and the beach was still quiet. However, Wen Yang and the others had already followed him out. The princeps on the lawn had disappeared and was replaced by another person. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a simple and honest face. There is a hint of rugged handsomeness in his maturity. He and Wen Yang's handsomeness were polar opposites. Wen Yang exuded an aura of elegance, while the princeps gave off the feeling of a country bumpkin. From the aesthetic point of view of women, he was not very popular. This person was Wen Yang's old classmate, Lin Fei. Ding Ming was the last person to come out. He was supporting Zhong Yalan. Lin Fei did not directly hurt her, but Lin Fei and Ding Ming's forces collided and hurt her slightly. Ding Ming was supporting Zhong Yalan. He even injected a stream of energy into Zhong Yalan's undetectable lower abdomen. His purpose was simple. No matter how cruel and ruthless the outside world was, this unborn little life should not be affected. Because of this small action, Zhong Yalan's previous hatred towards Ding Ming turned into gratitude. Ji Qinxue also nodded approvingly. Mr. Ding Ming, not bad. At this moment, Wen Yang's aura suddenly became scorching hot and powerful. He coldly said, "You can't escape." When I came in, this subspace was already locked down by me. The main control system will only release it after 8 hours. Right now, it is the princeps' fixed daily resting time. Lin Fei also coldly looked at him, his expression becoming savage. I could take care of you 3 years ago, and I can still take care of you 3 years later. Wen Yang said, "Is that so? Let me see what you've learned all these years as a senior brother." Qi Yuan and Mo Xiao Xiao also activated their origin energy. Just as they were about to take the initiative to attack, Ding Ming suddenly shouted, "Don't move." Qi Yuan was surprised. Why? Ding Ming stared at the 2 people on the beach. This is his own debt. It's better for him to settle it himself. After all, if he can't even take care of this Lin Fei, then he doesn't need to be the Empire's princeps anymore. The 2 of them still did not understand the deeper meaning of Ding Ming's words. Ji Qinxue could not help but say, "Mr. Ding Ming, you mean?" Ding Ming mercilessly cut her off. Yes, on the beach, the waves were like clouds. Wen Yang and Lin Fei stood at the peak of the clouds. At the same time, everyone was under the illusion that they were men who stood at the peak of the world. One for power, the other for love. Now, they were standing on opposite sides. Were power and love natural opposites? In a daze, when Yang suddenly leapt up, what he used was actually Ding Ming's signature move, carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Because he was so fast, not only was his hand distorted, but his entire body was distorted as well. He was the blade, and the blade was him. The Grim Reaper's scythe cut almost silently toward Lin Fei. Even Lin Fei did not dare to take such an attack head-on. He dodged into the sea and swung his hand back, sending a black curtain back. Only Ding Ming could appreciate the essence of this kind of demon's cape. Ding Ming thought that the capes of Towering Sky Peak, Widow, and Gong Ping were already very strong, but he did not expect Lin Fei's level to be even higher. As soon as the cape appeared, it began to spin. Even the sea was cut open, creating a huge whirlpool. When Yang's blade did not hit its target, he continued to move forward and hit the cape of his palm. Walala, countless black stars scattered in all directions. This palm had shattered the cloak, shattered the waves, and even shattered the silver-white moonlight. Seeing this, Ding Ming and Ji Qinxue's expressions became even more solemn. Lin Fei obviously did not expect Wen Yang to be able to resist the power of the demons. He only felt a shocking and terrifying wall pressing down on him, almost stopping the origin in his body. At this moment, he realized that Wen Yang must have had a fortuitous encounter in the past 3 years and raised his strength to a new level. Lin Fei gritted his teeth, and his body shook violently. A black dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws shot out from his chest. After passing through the waves, it also collided head-on with his opponent. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound. A terrifying explosion occurred on the surface of the sea. At that moment, the seawater seemed to have collapsed, revealing a deep pit with a diameter of 200 meters. Then the seawater instantly closed up and burst out with a huge energy wave. This energy wave completely flattened the beach, turned the coconut trees and grassland into a wasteland, and instantly destroyed the palace. Even the moonlight was covered up. It was as if sand and stones were flying everywhere, and the sun and moon were no longer shining. Even Ding Ming and the others retreated. Qi Yuan and Mo Xiao Xiao could not open their eyes at all. Right now, this picturesque paradise had really become a dark and gloomy graveyard of ruins. There was no paradise on Earth. Everything was just misty dream flowers. Perhaps the origin of this world was darkness and desolation. After an unknown period of time, the collision of the two huge forces gradually subsided. When Yang and Lin Fei stood in the sea, facing each other, neither of them moved. However, Wen Yang was calm and composed, standing proudly. Lin Fei, on the other hand, had a hint of bewilderment in his eyes. With one look, he knew that Wen Yang had the upper hand. "You?" Lin Fei pointed at Feng Xingjian, his voice filled with disbelief. "Why do you have the Black Wind imprint?" Wen Yang said coldly, "Do you still think that you're the boss of the Hidden Front? You're not anymore." "Impossible, impossible." Lin Fei seemed to have seen the most terrifying thing. He gritted his teeth again and waved his palms in a circle. The seawater roared again. With Lin Fei as the center, a black warrior's image turned into mist and covered his body. This black warrior was about 10 meters tall and held a huge black sword. Suddenly, it slashed toward Wen Yang. Even Ding Ming had not seen this demon's martial technique before. However, Ding Ming knew that this was definitely an extremely powerful move. He really could not imagine how Wen Yang would deal with the demon's ultimate technique without the divine light cloak. Chapter 876. Facing the demons, Wen Yang couldn't help but laugh coldly. "You're no longer a human after releasing the demons. You don't deserve to talk about love and humanity." The giant sword finally came down, but unfortunately, Wen Yang was nowhere to be seen. Under the telekinesis vision of Ding Ming and Ji Qinxue, Wen Yang seemed to have turned into a transparent figure. With a swoosh, he passed through Lin Fei's body. Lin Fei looked like he was struck by lightning. His whole body suddenly spasmed. Obviously, he was hit hard. However, the Dark Warrior's image didn't disappear. What was strange was that Lin Fei seemed to be stunned and forgot to fight back. How could Wen Yang miss such an opportunity? His shadow passed through Lin Fei's body a few times with a schwa 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 sound. With a splash, Lin Fei fell down. The demon's souls also disappeared. However, Lin Fei didn't die. He had an indescribable desire to live. He crawled on the sea and climbed up the beach with difficulty. He crawled towards Ding Ming and the others. Wen Yang showed his true body on the beach. He didn't attack again because Lin Fei in his current state was no longer worthy of his personal attack. Lin Fei's 7 orifices were bleeding. It was black blood that flowed out, especially from his eyes and mouth. It made him look even more evil and terrifying. He looked more like a demon that crawled out of hell. "Yalan, Yalan," Lin Fei shouted with difficulty. At the last moment of his life, he didn't want to fight back anymore. He also didn't want to be the head of state. The only thing in his heart was the woman he had been dreaming about. She was the love of his life, but also the shackle of his life. He crawled closer and used the last of his strength to shout, "I love you. Will you believe me?" At this moment, everyone saw that half of Lin Fei's body was gone. He had been blown into two by Wen Yang's powerful attack. He had dragged his broken body over. This crawling was like his life. He had suffered too many injuries and had been living in the cold and merciless darkness. Perhaps the only light was the 3 years he had spent as the head of state. Looking at Lin Fei's begging expression, Zhong Yalan cried. She nodded hard. "I believe you. Life was such a strange thing." Perhaps it was because of the little life in her body that she was able to connect with him at this moment. She suddenly understood this person's inner feelings. He truly loved her and was willing to die for her. Ding Ming suddenly turned his head away. He didn't want to see this scene, but more than that, he couldn't bear to see it. When the demons were released, Ding Ming could sense how powerful Lin Fei was. However, Wen Yang's words knocked him down. "You're no longer human after releasing the demons. You don't deserve to talk about love and humanity." Yes, If Lin Fei chose to let the demons devour him completely, he would no longer be human. He would become a demon in the truest sense of the word. This situation was actually the same as Gong Ping's situation. In this battle between him and Wen Yang, it would be difficult to determine who would win. However, he chose to give up at the most important moment. Did he know that once he became a demon, he would no longer have the right to love someone? The reason why humans yearn for happiness was because of the existence of hope. He would rather die than lose this right. In the end, humanity still prevailed over the demonic nature. At this moment, Ding Ming really sympathized with Lin Fei. When he heard Zhong Yalin's words, Lin Fei actually smiled. "Yalin, please give me a quick death. I have no regrets." Zhong Yalin's hands trembled. She couldn't kill this man. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she had developed a very abnormal relationship with Lin Fei in the past 3 years. All of a sudden, a wave of pure white origin flames engulfed Lin Fei's body. Lin Fei's physical body was immediately reduced to nothingness. A black spirit could be seen struggling and dying within the origin flames. It was no different from the non-human demons that had died on towering Heaven Peak. When she looked up again, Wen Yang had already appeared behind Lin Fei. He slowly withdrew his hand, and the origin flame disappeared. Wen Yang seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. He turned his head and said, "The culprit has been eliminated. Xiao Luo, you guys go up and remove the restriction. Activate the master control to repair this place." Luo Anshu, Qi Yuan, and Mo Xiao Xiao breathed a sigh of relief. They turned and walked towards the lawn in the distance. The shuttle door had already appeared out of thin air. Ding Ming suddenly said, "Miss Ling, you should go to—" The transit string was stunned. She didn't understand what Ding Ming meant. Ding Ming said, "I want to talk to the head of state alone for a while." Seeing his expressionless face, the transit string was smart enough to take the initiative and say, "Ding Ming, the transit string, owe you too much. Until we meet again." Seeing the transit string wriggle away, Wen Yang didn't stop her. Ji Chenxue also realized that something was wrong. She turned her head and said, "Sister Lin, why don't you go to the ground and rest? Don't disturb the baby." Zhong Yalin didn't dare to look up at Wen Yang. The matter between her and Lin Fei couldn't be spread. If the outside world knew about it, it would be a shocking scandal for the Norse Empire. Seeing Zhong Yalin leave, Wen Yang still stood there without moving. Black suit, black pants, and black leather shoes. Wen Yang was dressed in black from head to toe. Ji Chenxue finally realized what was wrong. Standing under the night sky, Wen Yang didn't look like the head of state who had returned to the peak of power. Then who did he look like? Yes, Lin Fei had collapsed, but the boss of the Hidden Front hadn't. This was clearly a new boss of the Hidden Front. Ji Chenxue's palms were cold. Wen Yang stared at Ding Ming. "It's been 3 years. I didn't expect us to meet again here." Ding Ming was silent. "I shouldn't have come." Wen Yang said, "You really shouldn't have come." Ding Ming sighed. "But I still came. It's because I don't know what happened to you in the past 3 years." Wen Yang said, "It's not a bad thing." Ding Ming nodded. "I can see that even I am afraid of your current strength." Wen Yang didn't seem to want to talk about this topic. He changed his words. "What about my cloak?" Ding Ming said, "If you want it, I can return it to you at any time. But it seems that you don't need it now." Wen Yang put his hands behind his back. "Are we friends?" Ding Ming shook his head. "Maybe 3 years ago, but not now." Wen Yang looked disappointed. "I've always had high expectations for you, but I'm a little disappointed in this matter." Ding Ming said, "You've completely changed. You've changed so much that even I'm scared." Wen Yang said, "Oh." Ding Ming sighed deeply. "Because you're no longer a warrior of divine light. You've been tainted by the evil power of the demons." When Wen Yang revealed his true face, the black smoke was the power of the demons. Ding Ming couldn't have missed this detail. Wen Yang also sighed. "I know I can't hide this from you, but to deal with Lin Fei, I have to borrow the power of the demons." Ding Ming said, "It's because of this that it's difficult for us to be friends." Wen Yang said meaningfully, "But we shouldn't be enemies, right?" Ding Ming said, "We're not enemies now, but it's hard to say in the future. Back on the rainforest planet, I said that I hope that when we meet again, we won't have to fight. I'm afraid that the joke I made back then will become a reality. Ji Chinxue listened quietly to the two of them talk. She felt her eyelids twitching violently. When Yang said again, "Do you know that the Fifth Lord and I have a very high opinion of you? You're a rare genius." Ding Ming said, "But so what? In the face of monstrous power and sophisticated schemes, these are just fleeting clouds." When Yang said, "I have a suggestion, but I don't know if you're willing to accept it." Ding Ming said, "Please speak." When Yang stared at him and said seriously, "I want you to become the commander-in-chief of the Norse Empire's 3 armies and reconquer the fertile chalk star system. General Chu and Captain Xing, you will become your deputies and assist you in commanding the battlefield. You will be the most powerful person in the Empire, and your name will be written into the Empire's Hall of Fame." Ding Meng sighed and said, "You know that I'm not interested in these things." When Yang said, "But only when you have power will you be able to find and obtain greater resources, and your martial arts will become stronger. Isn't this what you want?" Ding Meng said, "If this was 3 years ago, I might have agreed to it. Unfortunately, the situation has changed. The main reason is that you've changed. You've become too unfamiliar." He paused for a moment before continuing. "Lin Fei isn't the real boss of the Hidden Front, and neither is Gong Ping. The real boss should be someone else, right?" When Yang was silent for a moment before saying, "Yes," Ding Meng said, "And you came back this time to get rid of Lin Fei. Other than your personal grudge, the other reason is that the real boss isn't happy with Lin Fei. He needs you to replace Lin Fei again. Otherwise, you wouldn't have killed him so quickly. You know that I've been investigating the Hidden Front, but the clues have been cut off." When Yang remained silent. This time, he did not answer. Sometimes, Ding Meng made people feel afraid. This kind of fear came from the fact that Ding Meng could often restore a lot of the truth from the scale and claw of a matter. Ding Meng continued, "You pretended to be Zhong Li Feng and waited for me. You also roped in Luo Anshu and successfully entered Apocalypse. I'm afraid that these weren't your last-minute plans. You already had a plan in place." When Yang said seriously, "The fertile chalk star system strategic retreat is the opposite of what I expected." Ding Meng said, "But the Frogman Kingdom is also retreating." When Yang said, "That's not the main point." Ding Meng said, "I understand. Those generals and elders are the ones you should focus on cleaning up." When Yang said leisurely, "What kind of people there will naturally happen to them?" Ji Chinxue was shocked. "If you really want to clean them up, the Empire's armed forces will be weakened by a lot." When Yang glanced at her, martial power is something that can only be developed through constant battles. If you rely on schemes, then it's not martial power. It's child's play. Ji Chinxue was speechless. Chapter 877. When Yang said in a low voice, "The real vitality comes from those young generals and soldiers. The parliament and the military are always relying on these stubborn and whimsical old fogies. Sooner or later, the empire will be led to a dead end." Ding Meng sighed and said, "It seems like you already have a comprehensive plan. You are still the most suitable candidate to be the empire's ruler." When Yang said proudly, "Of course," Ding Meng said, "What about your wife? How should we deal with this matter?" When Yang said, "I was the first to know about Yalin's pregnancy." Ding Meng said, "But you have tolerated it until now." When Yang said seriously, "This is not a matter of whether I tolerate it or not. It is her own problem. She and Lin Fei are in love, and she is even pregnant with a child. No one forced her to do this. To be more precise, Zhong Yalin is the one who secretly communicated with the Hidden Front from outer space. This is a crime of treason. She should be like you, a high-risk fugitive of the Empire." Ji Chinxue was shocked. "She is your first wife. She has done so much to help you become the ruler. How can you treat her like this?" When Yang had a strange look on his face, as if he was looking at someone he did not know. "Am I wrong?" Ji Chinxue was speechless again. He realized that when Yang was not spouting nonsense, it was as if he was explaining something objectively. However, ruler Wen Yang had changed. He had indeed changed. He He had become strange and terrifying, cold and heartless. Ji Chinxue could not help but ask, "Then what about her child?" Wen Yang replied coldly, "Do you think the child of a fugitive will be pitied? You." Ji Chinxue could not accept this result at all. "Are you even human?" Ding Ming suddenly sneered. "Of course not. He is the ruler of the Imperium, a big shot at the peak of power. What he has to consider is the overall situation. He has to be responsible for the entire Imperium. He won't stick to such trivial matters." In the face of Ding Ming's sarcasm, Wen Yang seemed unmoved. "You know me best," Ji Chinxue argued. "If you dare to kill Sister Lin, you will lose the support of the entire Apocalypse group, and your position as head of state will be in jeopardy." Ding Ming sighed. "You're wrong. Only by doing this can he show his fairness. Even if the Chancellor's wife breaks the law, she will still be punished like a commoner. This will undoubtedly gain the support of the public. Compared to financial support, the public support is just as important. She might even be re-elected." Wen Yang praised. "Men are still the most rational when looking at problems. Women are always short-sighted." Ding Ming continued, "Madam, this matter is indeed very troublesome for you. It will be very difficult to deal with. If you handle it well, things will go smoothly. If you don't, you will really be made a cuckold. Of course, I believe that you have your own plans." Wen Yang nodded. Although Zhong Yalan is the daughter of the Apocalypse Group CEO, she is definitely no longer the Chancellor's wife after doing such a thing. Ding Ming asked curiously, "Do you already have a candidate for the second Chancellor's wife?" Wen Yang's gaze fell on Ji Chinxue. Once the Beidou Group CEO becomes the Chancellor's wife, not only will the combat strength of the Empire's military increase by several levels, it will also become a much-told story in the Empire. The #1 goddess and the #1 Chancellor are definitely a match made in heaven. Although he said this, his gaze was strangely calm. There was no greed at all. In his eyes, a goddess like Ji Chinxue was just a tool. What he wanted was not this person, but the power that this person represented. This was the gaze of a superior. In your dreams, Ji Chinxue was shocked and angry. She did not expect Wen Yang's ambition to be so great. Wen Yang said, "This is not a dream. In the near future, this will very likely become a reality. Once this matter is carried out successfully, it will be a good thing for both you and I. When the time comes, the Apocalypse Group and the Beidou Group, as well as the undercurrents within the Empire, will all be quelled. Only then can everyone's attention be focused on the fertile chalk star system. This battlefield that has been fighting for hundreds of years will finally come to an end." Faced with Wen Yang's calmness, Ji Chinxue could not refute him no matter how angry she was. This was because she understood the logic behind this. Under the influence of true power, any individuals would be annihilated. This was how politics worked, unless one had the ability to change the entire situation. "What about Han Yan?" Ding Ming suddenly asked about this person. Wen Yang sighed. "You shouldn't have asked." Ding Ming was silent. "I think so too. No matter how deep your love is, you can't resist the temptation of power. Someone like her doesn't deserve you, but I still say the same thing. You've changed. You've become too unfamiliar." Wen Yang was silent for a moment before he said, "Perhaps this isn't a bad thing." Ding Ming said, "Oh." Wen Yang said meaningfully, "Just like what you said just now, we are neither friends nor enemies, so I can make an exception this time. You can leave now. Ji Zone, you can leave too." Ji Chinxue frowned. "What do you mean by this? Let me answer for him." Ding Ming sighed. "What he means is that he will spare us this time. But if we meet again next time, it might not be the same." Ji Chinxue couldn't believe her ears. How arrogant did he have to be to say such big words? Ding Ming seemed to know that she was not convinced. "If you really want to fight with him, you'll be humiliating yourself." Wen Yang looked at her with admiration. "That's right. I've never forced a woman, but if you really want to force me, I don't mind Goddess Ji submitting to me because you asked for it. I'm thinking that you also don't want to be forced by a man, right?" Ji Chinxue suddenly felt cold sweat seeping out of her palms. That was right. She might not have cared if someone else had said this, but who was Wen Yang? And who was Ding Ming? Among the warriors, they were at the top. If she didn't believe what they said, then no one could save her. Maybe we can work together to deal with him. Ji Chinxue swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She might not fully understand Ding Ming and Wen Yang, but she understood men because she had seen too many men. Men looked at her with all kinds of eyes: appreciation, greed, passion, infatuation. But Ding Ming and Wen Yang's eyes were different. Wen Yang's eyes were cruel and ruthless, while Ding Ming's eyes were deep and sharp. In other words, they completely ignored Ji Chinxue's beauty. If she really asked for help from Ding Ming now, he might not agree obediently. She couldn't take the risk, and she couldn't afford to lose face. Ding Ming suddenly said, "Goodbye." Wen Yang nodded. "If you think it through, you can contact me at any time. I will always welcome the two of you to join me. I wish you safety." This was the same tone as Lin Fei on Yuan Planet, but Ding Ming walked toward the shuttle door without looking back. Ji Chinxue looked at Wen Yang, and then looked at Ding Ming. She finally chose to follow behind Ding Ming. Looking at the shuttle door disappearing into the air, Wen Yang's mouth showed a cruel smile. The shuttle ladder took a long time to run. It took half an hour to come up, and now the process of going up would take the same time. Ding Ming stood by the window and looked at the scenery outside, his expression a little absent-minded. Ji Chinxue was the same. Everything that had just happened was like a dream. "How much do you think of what he said?" Ji Chinxue was the first to break the silence. Ding Ming said 90%. "What about the remaining 10%? Ji Chinxue asked with concern. Ding Ming turned to look at her and said word by word, "The boss of Beidou is marrying the head of state of the empire as his second wife. I absolutely believe this." Ji Chinxue's heart suddenly tightened. This was what she was concerned about. Ding Ming said again, "But I can see that you don't want to." Ji Chinxue relaxed a little. "If I really don't want to, no one could do anything to me." Ding Ming nodded. "There is one thing you don't understand. You are not attractive to him. Is that so?" Ji Chinxue was obviously not convinced. Ding Ming sighed. "What he really wants is not a wife, but the identity of the boss of Beidou. As for who the boss of Beidou is, it doesn't matter. Even if it is an ugly woman, he doesn't care. Maybe you are not the boss of Beidou anymore." Ji Chinxue smelled a strong conspiracy. Does he really have the ability to do that? Ding Ming said, "He is very similar to Lin Fei. People like them pay attention to certainty. If they don't have absolute certainty, why would they talk big? Maybe he already had a countermeasure before he came." Ji Chinxue said, "What about the remaining 10%? Ding Ming sighed. "The only thing I don't believe is that he will let us go." Ji Chinxue was puzzled. "Aren't we leaving now?" Ding Ming smiled bitterly. "Do you really think we are leaving?" Ji Chinxue was stunned again. Ding Ming sighed. "This is a shocking inside story. He'll never let anyone leak this kind of thing. Those who know must keep it a secret." Ji Chinxue expressed his approval. "Even if I tell others, I don't think anyone will believe me." Ding Ming said, "That is not important. What is important is that there is only one kind of person in the world who can really keep a secret." Ji Chinxue immediately understood. Dead people would not reveal secrets, but she still found it hard to believe. Looking at her suspicious expression, Ding Ming could not help but sigh. "You will soon understand that things are not as simple as you think." The shuttle ladder stopped moving, and Ji Chinxue's heart sank after the door opened. This was because she found that this was not the hall on the first floor of the Apocalypse headquarters, because this was also a subspace. This subspace was exactly the same as Lin Fei's love nest. There was a blue sky overhead, a green lawn, a vast ocean, and an exquisite palace. There were all kinds of birds and flowers, and all kinds of pleasant insects. Even the sky was a gentle sea view at night. However, the air was not fresh, because it was filled with a strong smell of blood. Looking down, they were all fragmented corpses. These corpses seemed to have been cut into dozens of pieces by sophisticated instruments and were neatly placed on the ground. If it were not for Ding Ming and Ding Ming's experience, they would have suspected that these pieces of flesh did not come from human bodies. After careful inspection, Ji Chinxue could not help but feel a bitter taste in her throat, because there were 3 corpses on the ground: Qi Yuan, Mo Xiao Xiao, and Luo Anshu. The three of them had been completely dismembered. Chapter 878. It was normal for Luo Anshu to be silenced, because he was an ordinary person. However, it was different for Qi Yuan and Mo Xiao Xiao. As the Chancellor's secretaries, they were powerful enough. Yet, they were brutally murdered. What kind of expert could kill them in such a short time? Ji Qinxue looked around. She realized that the transit string was not here. However, Zhong Yalan was lying on grass. Her life force was still normal. She was probably unconscious. On the steps of the villa's entrance, a man in a suit stood as straight as a javelin. His appearance and figure were very ordinary. He was also the type that would not stand out in a crowd. However, his attire was very strange because there was a long sword and a black scabbard at his waist. Although Ding Ming did not understand the changes in Chancellor Wenyang in the past 3 years, he knew how terrifying this person was. He had always suspected that this person was the boss of the Hidden Front. This person was the core member of the Hidden Front, Officer Number 2. Ding Ming secretly activated the origin. "We meet again." Number 2 nodded slowly. However, his attention was not on Ding Ming at all. His face was like a hard piece of granite, as cold as a 10,000-year-old iceberg. However, when his empty, white eyes landed on Ji Qinxue, a trace of passion flashed across his eyes. His lifeless face had a strange change, as if he was a hungry wolf that had seen a piece of juicy meat. Ji Qinxue usually faced such gazes many times. However, at this moment, she felt an unprecedented nervousness. Being stared at by this person was like a wild beast falling into a trap. This was an experience she had never experienced before. "Did you kill all these people?" Ji Qinxue gathered her courage and asked. Number 2 did not seem to be good at talking. He coldly glanced at the unconscious Zhong Yalan in the grass. "There are only 2 kinds of people I don't kill." Ji Qinxue was a little surprised. "Which 2? Number 2 replied indifferently. "Beautiful women and children." This answer surprised even Ding Ming. "You've been waiting here for a long time." Number 2 said, "You have 2 choices." Ding Ming frowned. "Which 2? Number 2 said slowly, "Agree to the head of state's proposal immediately." Ding Ming sighed. "I've already discussed this with the head of state." Number 2 said, "Looks like you didn't agree." Ding Ming said, "Yes." Number 2 said, "Then your other choice is to wait for death." Ji Qinxue sneered. "He may not be waiting for death." Number 2 looked at her. "You also have 2 choices. The first is to immediately agree to the head of state's suggestion and become his wife." "Looks like you haven't woken up yet." Ji Qinxue sneered even more. Number 2 said, "I personally hope that you will reject the head of state." Ji Qinxue was stunned again. Number 2 said, "Because once you reject the head of state, then I will have the right to decide what to do with you. I will play with you well. I haven't tasted a woman like you for many years." These were obviously very flirtatious words, but he said it so seriously. This made Ji Qinxue feel a chill in his heart. "You seem to like women a lot?" Ding Ming suddenly asked. "Yes." Number 2's expression became serious. "Women and death are the origins." Ding Ming and Ji Qinxue found it hard to understand these words. "Unfortunately, you won't understand." Number 2's expression returned to normal. He looked at Ji Qinxue again, and his gaze became thoughtful. "Looking at your strength, at most 3 days." Ji Qinxue frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Number 2 said, "I can play with you for 3 days. After 3 days, you won't be able to take it anymore and will be played to death by me." Ji Qinxue was infuriated. She had never heard such obscenities in her entire life. Number 2, however, was very serious. "That's already very good. Very few women can last a day with me. You should be proud that you can enjoy me for 3 days. You could go die now." Ji Qinxue couldn't take it anymore. Her figure flickered, and she shot out. She was indeed worthy of being called the national goddess. Even her movements had a kind of elegance. The way she flew out was like a dance. Coupled with her clothes, she really looked like she was floating in the air. She intertwined her palms and pressed them together. With her right elbow as the center, she created a semi-arc of red and blue origin energy in front of her. She tried to send the origin energy toward number two. Number two's eyes lit up. Not bad. Even Ding Meng was nodding. This was the first person he had ever seen who could combine both heat and ice into one. Just this point alone was enough to show that Ji Qinshue's foundation technique was not low. Number two watched as the scorching and bone-piercing origin energy arrived in front of him. He didn't panic at all. He actually raised his right elbow and met Ji Qinshue's attack head-on. There was a muffled pong sound. The air didn't distort, nor did it vibrate. Ji Qinshuo was sent flying into the air before falling back to her original position. However, she wasn't discouraged. This was because she had been testing the waters with her first move. Her opponent was definitely very strong, which was to be expected. However, Ding Meng didn't think that way. Although number two seemed to have met Ji Qinshue's attack head-on, it was as if he had absorbed Ji Qinshue's origin energy and used his elbow to force Ji Qinshu back. This was something that Ji Qinshu probably didn't understand. Sure enough, Ji Qinshu secretly increased her origin energy and flew into the air once more. This time, she didn't use any martial skills or release any origin energy. She was like a person in a painting as she floated toward number two. This situation was extremely strange, and it made people feel as if they were in a trance. She seemed to be flying, but she also seemed to be walking on the ground. She had clearly floated over, but for some reason, she had suddenly appeared at number two's flank. This was definitely an extremely powerful movement technique. What followed was an exaggerated scene. A total of 5 Ji Qinshues surrounded number two. None of them were doppelgangers, but real people. Furthermore, each of them had their own unique characteristics. Some were proficient in the quick step kick technique, some were proficient in the use of fists and palms, some were able to directly release origin energy, and some were able to fly around in the air. Every move of Ji Qinshue's was clearly a technique that had been passed down through the hands of a famous expert. Not only were their postures elegant and their forms varied, but the 5 of them were also able to connect perfectly with one another. There were no openings at all. A faint white lotus-shaped force field enveloped the steps of the villa. This was an eye-opener for Ding Meng. Ji Qinshue's doppelgangers were actually using his own secret technique, the solitary serene lotus steps. However, their realms were clearly higher than his. The doppelgangers were able to use a variety of fists and palms, and they were all top-tier martial arts techniques. As for what kind of formation they were using, Ding Meng had no idea. The strength that Ji Qinshu was currently displaying was something that Ding Meng could not achieve even when he had just become a war god. This number one beauty of the empire was not just for show. She was actually quite capable. However, the strength that number two displayed was even more incredible. From the very beginning, he had been dodging. The characteristic of his dodging could be described with one word: twisting. He could twist his body, his neck, and his limbs. The most amazing thing was that he could twist his joints in the opposite direction. No matter how dense Ji Qinshue's attacks were, or how exquisite his moves were, he could dodge them in an even weirder and more unpredictable way. As Ji Qinshue's attacks intensified, number two's entire body was like a cloud of black fog. He split apart with a whoosh and then closed again with a whoosh. He was so fast that it was simply unbelievable. Ji Qinshu did not even touch his suit. He, number two, suddenly let out a dry laugh. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant, as if he had swallowed tree bark. I take back what I said just now. You can accompany me for at least 5 days. You're truly a rare specimen. I have to satisfy you this once. Shut up. The 5 Ji Qinshu roared in unison. The 5 of them attacked at the same time. 5 blue lights suddenly appeared in their palms. 5 huge pillars of light appeared out of nowhere. Countless blue ice needles poured out from the pillars. The magnificent palace immediately turned into a dazzling ice palace. Ding Meng noticed that Ji Qinshue's control of origin energy was actually very precise. Only the area around the villa was enveloped by the force field. The grass and flower beds here were not affected at all. However, the problem was that number 2 was still fine. The black fog once again turned into a black shadow. This black shadow flashed back and forth in the pouring rain. The speed at which it flashed far exceeded the speed at which the ice needles poured out. However, number 2's speed gradually slowed down. This was because anyone who was trapped in this ice force field would be affected. At this moment, the 5 ice pillars merged into one without any warning. They actually turned into a giant ice sword that was about 20 meters long. The ice sword's aura was so strong and cold that he could immediately feel the opponent's killing intent. Just as he was about to pull the black sword at his waist to block the attack, the giant sword actually turned into a shadow and mysteriously disappeared. His heart sank. He knew that he had been tricked. This was not a trick because the giant sword was real. It was the real power of dark ice and was a martial technique at the pinnacle of a very, very high realm. However, it was a mystery how Ji Qinxue made it disappear. At this moment, the 5 Ji Qinxue retreated down the steps. The 5 of them merged back into one. Ji Qinxue changed her elegant fighting style from before. She suddenly threw out a punch like a boxer. This posture really damaged her beautiful image, but it was definitely fast and effective. With a boom, the force of this punch directly uprooted the ice palace and sent it flying into the distant sea. However, that was not the end of it. Ji Qinxue punched left and right consecutively. 5 consecutive punches were in the form of uppercuts. The last punch was a straight punch across the air. To be honest, Ding Ming was rather impressed. Not only was Ji Qinxue at the pinnacle of martial arts techniques, but she was also quite experienced. She used the secret manual to create a formation to temporarily trap the opponent. Then, she used the fake dark ice power to distract the opponent. Finally, she threw out 5 punches with all her strength. These 5 punches were the true essence of a killer move. They contained the power of a war, god-level origin energy, astral wind, and origin flames. There were also the additional effects of cannon force, tremor force, penetration force, and triple wave. Anyone who took it head-on would definitely be seriously injured. After the 5 punches, Ji Qinxue regained her elegance. She gently slid back to her original position with a confident look on her face. The entire space in the direction of the villa exploded. It felt as if she had thrown a string of powerful firecrackers. Even if number 2 didn't die from the explosion, he would still be injured. Not bad. Ding Ming nodded. Ji Qinxue's lips curled into an imperceptible smile. It was an honor to be praised by an expert like Ding Ming. Ding Ming was still nodding. Don't think that I'm praising you. This hidden front commander strength is really not bad. Ji Qinxue's expression immediately fell. She saw the situation on the other side. It was completely different from what she had imagined. Chapter 879. The snow-white space, formed by the ice origin energy, was like a transparent coffin. The ice streams within the coffin continued to gather, but number 2 remained unmoving after he stood still. He opened his palm, and the jet-black scabbard spun rapidly in his palm, forming a black disc. The disc also seemed to release silk-like streams of black energy outwards. When all the white streams of ice collided with the disc, they were immediately dispersed by the black origin energy and turned into nothingness. However, it was more like the 2 of them canceled each other out. Not long after, all the ice origin energy was neutralized, and the disc stopped spinning. It spun in number 2's hand and returned to his waist. Ding Ming's eyes flashed. He realized that the way this person carried his sword was very strange. Under normal circumstances, martial artists would carry their swords diagonally from right to left on their belt. This was because it was convenient for the right hand to draw the sword. However, number 2 was the opposite. He carried his sword diagonally from left to right on his waist. It seemed that this person's sword drawing style was unique. After blocking Ji Qinxue's storm-like attacks, number 2 grinned. Is that it? Ji Qinxue's eyebrows rose, and her face turned red. She looked angry, but she was actually afraid. Although the attack just now was not her limit, it was not far from it. The problem was that such a powerful attack had not forced her opponent to take the initiative to attack. She had not even been able to force him to draw his sword. Any Origin Energy user would know the difference between them. Ji Qinxue glanced at Ding Meng from the corner of her eyes. Her intention was very clear. Naturally, she hoped that Ding Meng would attack, and it would be best if the two of them worked together. However, Ding Meng just stood there and did not move. The reason was very simple. Sometimes, the thoughts of an iron-willed man would be selfish. You two should fight first. It would be best if both of you were injured. In the end, I would come and pick up the scraps. Ding Meng was not the kind of person who would help someone just because they were a peerless beauty. Even if Ji Qinxue was humiliated by number 2 in front of him, he would still be indifferent. Too many experiences in the past had taught him that the best choice at this time was to stand still. Seeing that Ji Qinxue was stunned, number 2 couldn't help but sneer. Since you're gone, it's my turn. It was impossible for Ji Qinxue to sit still and wait for her death. She flew out once again. She understood the principle of striking first to gain the upper hand. This time, she did not use any fancy moves. She simply swept her leg out with a forceful kick. This was a solid foundation. The high-heeled shoes had completely transformed into a rainbow-colored light. Not only was the light distorted, even the surrounding scenery seemed to be distorted. This massive energy was so pure that it was not inferior to a starship missile. However, in the next instant, the jet-black scabbard appeared in number 2's hand again. It began to spin again. This time, the shape of the spinning scabbard was not a circular plate, but a black vortex. This vortex seemed to have an endless suction force. Not only did it dissolve Ji Qinxue's pure origin energy, it also firmly held her ankle in place. Ji Qinxue was at a disadvantage this time because of her outfit. This kind of knee-length dress was really inconvenient for her to use close-range combat skills. Her exposed white calves were really fanciful. Number 2 actually stretched out her nose to take a sniff. She couldn't help but sigh. Fragrant, he was already very satisfied with the outside part of the dress. He wondered how beautiful the inside part of the dress would be. The scabbard suddenly spun in a half circle. He tried to use the hilt to lift the bottom of his opponent's dress. Shameless. Ji Qinxue was furious. She spun horizontally in the air and swept her other leg in the opposite direction. When she moved, the view under her skirt was undoubtedly exposed. Especially from number 2's perspective, he was the only one who could see it. Looking at his dumbfounded expression, he felt like he was about to have a nosebleed. While he was in a daze, Ji Qinxue's flying kick landed on his face. Bang! Number 2 slid back 10 meters before he could steady himself. He felt a burning pain on his face. He stretched out his hand and wiped it. It was blue-black blood. Ding Meng could clearly see that there was a shocking bloody mark on number 2's face. The strength of this kick was not to be underestimated. You dare to hurt me? Number 2 was also angry, but then he put on a sinister smile. From now until noon tomorrow, I will not rest. I want to torture you enough. No one can save you. He crossed his elbows and suddenly waved them in front of him. A terrifying black dragon surged out and directly covered Ji Qinxue, who had just landed on the ground. Ji Qinxue knew how powerful this demon's martial arts technique was. She did not dare to take it head-on. Her whole body flew back diagonally and into the air. Who knew that this black dragon wave was the same as her dark ice force? It was a feint. The real attack appeared above her head. 2 black demon claws suddenly appeared in the air. Just like how number 2 waved his hand, the 2 claws separated and waved. It was as if the air had been torn apart. This was the realm of the demons. It was not something that a human martial artist could resist. A human origin ability user would probably be torn to pieces on the spot. Clang! A strong sound rang out. The whole lawn was lit up. Even the seawater seemed to be lit up. An incredible scene appeared. An exquisite diamond shield covered Ji Qinxue's body. The devil's claw did not even shake the shield. Ji Qinxue, who was inside the shield, looked like an otherworldly fairy. Nothing could be more beautiful. A divine light martial artist? Number 2 and Ding Ming both showed surprised expressions. Ding Ming was more surprised than number 2 because he saw it most clearly. When the demon claws were about to tear Ji Qinshui apart, the gem necklace on Ji Qinshui's neck was activated and created a diamond shield. This was the divine light necklace. Ding Ming instantly came to this conclusion. However, Ji Qinshui's divine light martial arts technique was still very ordinary. She did not even have a crown-shaped shield. Number 2 sneered again. So what if you're a divine light martial artist? A toy will always be a toy. Be careful, Ding Ming had to warn them. He could ignore the national goddess, but he could not leave a divine light martial artist to die. Ding! This sound was so ear-piercing that it felt like their eardrums were about to burst. Boom! A loud noise shook the sky. All the strong light disappeared, and everything returned to darkness. Ji Qinshui, who was in midair, spilled a trail of blood as she fell and landed heavily on the lawn. There was a bloody hole on the left side of her abdomen. White blood was gushing out from the wound. Her abdomen had been completely penetrated. Where was the diamond shield at this moment? It had disappeared without a trace. She knew that her opponent had drawn his sword. But how did the sword break her shield? Where did it come from? How did it hit her? She knew nothing. She could only feel a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. It felt like thousands of poisonous snakes were gnawing at her internal organs. The origin was moving very slowly. This kind of pain was indescribable. Then, these poisonous snakes seemed to have turned into thousands of burning red steel needles that gathered in her throat. It was very uncomfortable. Ji Qinshui saw stars in her vision. Her head felt heavier than 1,000 pounds. She knew that this was a sign that she was about to faint. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, this spat out also spat out the condensed energy. She fell down completely. In a daze, she realized that a cool energy had entered her body. It slowly healed the injuries in her internal organs. This energy was so familiar. It was much purer than her own energy. She looked up in surprise. She saw Ding Ming standing next to her. He looked at number 2 expressionlessly. The white light vortex in his palm was flashing faintly. Streaks of white light were spreading to her lower abdomen. Apparently, he was injecting energy into her. Ji Qinshui's fearful heart finally calmed down. This was because she had been waiting for someone of the same kind. Ding Ming was also a divine light martial artist. Number 2 looked at Ding Ming with interest. You want to ruin my plans? Ding Ming said, I'm interested in the Empire's number 1 beauty. You don't stand a chance. No. 2 said disdainfully, with your strength, you don't deserve to play with this kind of beauty. Ding Ming's expression was thoughtful. He suddenly said, You are not from the hidden front. Number 2 revealed a surprised expression. Yeah, you're quite observant, kid. Ding Ming continued to say something shocking. This is not your real face either. Number 2's expression darkened. Back on Rainforest Planet, I suggested to Lin Fei that we work with a few generals to kill you. In the end, he was too arrogant and let you go. Now, he has finally grown into a big problem. Ji Qinshui did not understand what he meant, but the two of them knew. Back on Rainforest Planet, Ding Ming could not see through number 2's real face. It was not only because of the Hidden Front's mask, but also because his telekinetic vision could not see through his disguise. Now, Ding Ming could directly see that number 2 was still not showing his real face. This meant that Ding Ming had improved compared to 3 years ago. Ding Ming said, What kind of benefits did the Hidden Front boss promise you that someone like you is willing to work for the Hidden Front? I'm really curious. Number 2 smiled viciously. You will never know the answer to this question. Wait until I kill you, then I will enjoy this woman. Ding Ming stared at him. Are you confident that you can kill me? Number 2 sneered. Nonsense. You really are? Ding Ming stared at him. For some reason, number 2 actually felt a little guilty. Ding Ming's gaze was too deep, just like the vast and boundless universe. One would only know how insignificant one was when placed in the universe, just like dust. This was exactly what number 2 was feeling now. This time, he slowly pulled out the black scabbard from his belt. His expression was very serious. It was obvious that he regarded Ding Ming as a real opponent. Ding Ming did not underestimate him. The scene of number two's attack just now had left a deep impression on him. He broke the shield of the Diamond Star spell with one strike and severely injured Ji Qinxue. To be honest, if he did not come into contact with AIG's techniques and possess the Sovereign's Mark, he would not have believed that there was such a terrifying sword of demons in this world. No wonder when Yang said that he would make an exception and let him go. It turned out that he wanted number two to wait here. No one could avoid this place. Anyone who came into contact with the secrets of the Sovereign must die. Ji Qinxue quietly crawled away. She crawled to a place far away. She could see that the confrontation between the two in front of her seemed peaceful, but it was actually a moment of peace before the final battle. When the Real storm came, it would be earth-shattering and terrifying. Chapter 880. There was no light. That was because the sword was black. The body of the sword seemed to be liquid, solid, and smoke. Even a knowledgeable Ding Ming could not recognize such a sword. The only thing he could see was number two's backhand drawing the sword and thrusting forward. The entire process was done in one breath. Before he could even blink, the tip of the sword had already reached his eyelashes. This magic sword had only one characteristic, and that was fast. It was so fast that it was beyond your imagination. Ding Ming suddenly backhanded. At this moment, Ji Qinxue's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Ding Ming actually dared to fight the sword with his bare hand. Did he want to die? Whoosh! A black and white energy halo spread out in the air as if a space-time tunnel had been opened under the stars. Then, the halo gradually dimmed and the air returned to normal. Taking a closer look, Ji Qinxue realized that there was a spinning cross-shaped star under Ding Ming's palm. It looked more like a cross-shaped blade. Apparently, the divine light singularity had blocked number two's deadly black sword. In just the first exchange of blows, both of them had teleported to the beach. Number two looked excited. Good, as expected of the god of war Ding Ming. This nickname is not for nothing. Ding Ming said calmly, "If you are relying on this sword of yours, I advise you to give up on that confidence." Number two's eyes shone brightly. "Then take another one." As soon as he finished speaking, number two leaped into the air with his sword and headed straight for Ding Ming. From afar, he looked like a bird flying on the sea, but a bird was not strong enough to shake a rock. Suddenly, number two and his sword turned into a giant black probe. This was the standard flying star chasing moon and golden eagle sword, with the help of the demon's energy. It could be said that the power of starship cannons was not as strong as this. Ding Ming calmly raised his right palm. The singularity of divine light instantly expanded several times. A huge cross-shaped star began to spin. Because it was spinning so fast, it was like a white gear. Not only did it cut through the surging mana, it also cut through the earth, the night sky, the sea, and the air. The entire space was filled with this kind of sacred and magnificent light and energy. Those who had not experienced this scene would not be able to understand the kind of earth-shattering counterattack. The energy of the probe was stripped away, broken down, and purified bit by bit. Number two's true body was revealed. He was still suspended in the air, still maintaining the posture of thrusting forward. The tip of his sword was less than half a meter away from Ding Ming, but it could not move forward even an inch. Ji Qinxue was stunned. The power of the divine light of her own kind was dozens of times stronger than hers. This was the standard way to crush the opponent with brute force. No. Two's forward thrust did not succeed, but he was not discouraged. He decisively flipped his wrist, and the black sword changed shape. It split into many twisted black ropes, but they looked more like the tentacles of a monster. These tentacles instantly bypassed the divine light in front of them and fell like lightning. Ding Ming's eyes, throat, ears, heart, and lower abdomen were all pierced by this strange magic sword at the same time. After that, Ding Ming's figure gradually disappeared and dimmed. Number two was shocked. How did this person know that be *TCH's secret technique to create a real clone? Swoosh! Number 2 backhanded his sword and stabbed at his ribs. This sword seemed to have pierced the heart of Ding Ming, who was floating from behind. However, Ding Ming's clone dimmed and disappeared again. Number 2's swordsmanship could be said to be at the peak of perfection. After missing the second time, he consecutively struck 2 postures, looking back at the moon and crouching with the Buddha facing the sky. The magic sword stabbed back for the 3rd time. This time, he was still half a beat slower. Because these 2 postures were formed in a hurry, it was inevitable that there would be flaws in the connection. Ding Ming's figure was like a flash of light. Once again, he flashed back from behind number 2. Thump! The hand blade that flashed with white light landed accurately on number 2's forehead. Moreover, this hand blade was extremely exquisite. It was launched later, but arrived first, arriving before the demonic sword pierced into number 2's heart. After the hand knife hit number 2's forehead, the magic sword disappeared. Number 2's entire body was smashed into the sea like a cannonball. Along the way, there were loud explosions. The sea water was blasted open, revealing the corals at the bottom of the sea. Those corals were instantly reduced to ashes. This was the true power of the divine light martial artists. Jichin Xue finally saw it for himself. Number 2, who had sunk into the sea, did not seem to be injured. He immediately swung his sword and rose to the surface. At this time, what awaited him was Ding Ming's big move. The divine light singularity in the shape of a bright cross-shaped star shot out from Ding Ming's fingertips again. This was a singularity that had fused with a large amount of space energy. When it flew halfway, the bright star snapped in half and turned into the shape of a clamp. It looked like it was going to clamp number 2 to death. In number 2's vision, this was no longer as simple as a clamp. This was a splitting net thrown by the divine light martial artists. Once you were caught in it, you would never be able to escape. Number 2 used all his strength to raise his sword with both hands and thrust it towards the sky. Swoosh! Another 2-colored halo spread out. The sea level dropped a lot because the sea water was vaporized. However, the magic sword still could not withstand it. The clamp was still pressing down, but no. 2's feet had already sunk into the mud. With a loud bang, a white trident suddenly appeared on the tip of the sword. It looked like something like a shield. The demon's sword slowly pushed back the singularity bit by bit. What was this? Jichin Xue obviously had no idea. Ding Ming, however, was extremely shocked. This was the form of the divine Aero spaceship, which was also one of the symbols of the Mao Xing civilization. What was going on? Number 2 was obviously a demon's. Now, he was actually using the divine light martial arts technique. Show me your true form. Ding Ming gritted his teeth. His entire body flashed and appeared above the singularity. He pressed down on the center of the cross with one hand and forced his energy to press down again. Boom! The trident shield immediately shattered. The stars in the sea fell, and the galaxy shattered. The scene was extremely spectacular. Jichin Xue was stunned again and again. She now felt that the battle between these two could be considered the pinnacle of martial arts. Number 2's powerful foundation and Ding Ming's pure energy. If the battle between the two could be recorded, it would be enough to benefit an ordinary origin ability user for the rest of their lives. However, this time, number 2 could no longer resist. Ding Ming had gathered at least 80 billion energy points on the singularity. This number meant that number 2 could not let go of the sword. Once he did, the twisted cross would grind him to death. Kacha! 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 Number 2's knees were sinking into the mud. He no longer had any extra energy to protect his clothes. His suit and pants were falling apart bit by bit, disintegrating and drifting away. He was bare-chested, and his entire body was sinking bit by bit. At this point, even Jichin Xue could tell that he would definitely be ground to ashes by Ding Ming in half a minute at most. However, Ding Ming did not let his guard down. In his vision, number 2's energy had been completely suppressed by him. The demon's aura was gradually weakening, but he still had a vague feeling that something was not right. The trident shield just now had already alerted him. This person should still have something else up his sleeve. Suddenly, the aura below him soared violently. The tip of the sword in front of him emitted an astonishingly strong light. Ding Ming did not have time to distinguish what kind of light it was. His telekinesis vision was completely distorted. At this moment, he felt his hair stand on end. This was an instinctive reaction that he had developed over the years. He knew that a great danger was about to come. In the blink of an eye, Ding Ming let go of his hand and fell diagonally downward. He was a little slower in dodging. He could feel a long wound starting from his lower abdomen all the way to his shoulder blade. When the demon's energy entered his body, the operation of the origin immediately slowed down. A very unique pain spread throughout his body. It was like an anesthetic. Half of his body immediately went limp. "Mr. Ding Ming," Ji Chinxue exclaimed. What she saw was a black fog shrouding Ding Ming. The wound on Ding Ming's chest was particularly horrifying. His ribs were exposed. If Ding Ming was done for, she would end up in an even more tragic state. At this moment, the entire place was filled with white light. A person was hovering in the air with a sword in hand. The hidden front officer number 2 had disappeared. In his place was a woman. She was indeed a standard human woman, but she was not a beauty. On the contrary, she was an out-and-out and ugly woman. Almost all the characteristics of an ugly woman were reflected on her body. The woman was only 1.55 meters tall. Her body was as thin as a stick. If it were not for the sturdy black steel armor covering her body, one would have the illusion that she was a stunted dwarf. Her face was thin, and her cheeks were deeply sunken. She looked like a clumsy human skin wrapped around a skull. Her sparse and withered short hair fell down. No matter how strong one's mental fortitude was, it was inevitable that they would be frightened by this face. If a peerless beauty like Ji Chinxue was a perfect work of art created by the Creator, then this an ugly woman was a human-shaped demon hatched by the Lord of Hell. However, this was not the most important point. At this moment, her body was erupting with invisible flames that could only be seen through telekinesis. Her body, her steel armor, and her sword were only 2 colors, black and white. There was also a light blue, foggy oval fog force field around her. Ding Ming and Ji Chinxue were both martial artists of divine light. Their senses would not lie. This woman not only exuded the sacred aura of the gods, but she was also filled with the evil and treacherous energy of the demons. This woman was clearly a combination of a martial artist of divine light and a martial artist of devil sky. Her energy fluctuations were no longer that of an ordinary martial artist, but that of an interstellar martial artist. Bathed in this light blue halo, the woman gave off an indescribable feeling. She was like a combination of an angel and a demon. Even Ding Ming was stunned. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. He was afraid that even Little Rascal and the others would not be able to explain it. Perhaps only Sakas could explain it. Damn it, you're just a martial artist of divine light, yet you're able to force me to reveal my true form. An ugly woman said through gritted teeth. She suddenly shouted, "Now that you've seen this noble one's true form, quickly kneel down." Hearing this female, ghost-like scream, even Ding Ming felt as if he was seeing stars. Her voice echoed in his ears, and the origin energy in his body became chaotic. As for the heavily injured Ji Chinxue, his vision went black, his body went limp, and he fainted on spot. Chapter 881. A sudden gust of wind blew across the surface of the sea, and Ding Ming felt dizzy again. An ugly woman's voice seemed to be mixed with a fierce wind. As long as she opened her mouth to speak, not only could she destroy one's body, but she could also wear down one's will. This was the strength of an interstellar warrior. Human origin ability users would find it difficult to resist. Even origin ability users who had cultivated to the peak could only barely resist for a short while. They definitely could not afford to waste their energy for a long time. Ding Ming made a rough estimate. An ugly woman's energy index had exceeded 150 billion. In terms of energy index alone, he probably had no chance of winning. Suddenly, an ugly woman's expression changed. She also saw something unbelievable happen. Ding Ming, who was on the beach, suddenly turned into mist. It was as if waves had appeared around Ding Ming. As the waves rippled, the figure inside also blurred. It was a classic case of looking at the moon in the water or looking at flowers in the mist. She did not know that the first 8 origins in Ding Ming's body had been pushed to the limit, and they had already taken on the form of a vortex. This was a technique that used the Diamond Astral Art as a foundation and then activated the Heaven Ascension Sovereign King's AIG technique. Ding Ming's thought process was more straightforward. I don't care what kind of abnormal combination you are. No matter how powerful you are, can you beat the Heaven Ascension Sovereign King's technique? This was the most powerful existence in the entire universe. An ugly woman sensed that Ding Ming's energy was already strong enough, but now it had doubled in an instant. His aura was not fierce, but it was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It was erratic, and it was the kind that you could not figure out. Kill! An ugly woman raised her head and roared. The entire sky was filled with echoes. She pushed down with one hand, and the demonic sword shot out again. This time it was not a simple stab. Countless flying swords rained down on Ding Ming like a storm. Each sword was imbued with powerful divine power. This attack was enough to destroy an entire fleet. Ding Ming did not move, because there was no difference whether he moved or not. He just slowly raised his head and looked at the sky with his deep eyes. All of a sudden, all of the flying swords froze in front of him, buzzing and trembling nonstop. It was as if an invisible hand had pinched the tip of the sword, causing it to be unable to move. However, it was more like a poisonous snake that had its weak point restrained. An ugly woman revealed a surprised expression. She could vaguely sense that there was a black hole in front of Ding Ming. This bottomless hole seemed to be continuously devouring the energy on her sword. It was completely supplying energy to her opponent. What the hell was that? An ugly woman fiercely waved her hand, and all of the flying swords were summoned back in her hand, once again transforming into a complete demonic sword. She decided to change her strategy. In a flash, she appeared on the beach and once again thrust her sword at Ding Ming's face. Not only was her speed doubled, but her sword was also faster and steeper. From afar, the tip of her sword seemed to be twisted like a hook. Ding! A crisp sound rang out. An ugly woman was once again shocked. Ding Ming had actually casually caught her sword, and he had caught it with his bare hands. Upon closer inspection, Ding Ming did not really catch the sword with his bare hands. His hands were still wrapped in white light, but another pair of hands made of light had appeared in front of him. The 10 fingers were long and sharp, like a pair of steel claws, and the steel claws were firmly holding onto the demonic sword. She was still in a daze when the pair of steel claws suddenly moved along the body of the sword towards her face. The sharp aura caused her to feel a piercing pain on her face. Ding! 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 A series of rapid sounds rang out, and there were bursts of strong light on the beach. An ugly woman swung her sword to parry the pair of claws as she slid backwards. The most unique characteristic of the pair of claws was that they appeared out of thin air. If you parried them with your sword, they would immediately disappear into thin air. However, in the next instant, they would appear in another space and attack you from an extremely tricky angle. It was simply impossible to guard against them. On the beach, Ding Ming remained motionless like a statue. An ugly woman, on the other hand, was blocking left and right. It was as if she was fighting against an invisible ghost. This was the origin energy secret technique of Ling Tian King's Sun Divine Technique, Sharp Blade. The name sounded simple, but its uses were endless. Especially with the support of the Diamond Star Technique and telekinesis, it could transform into many different weapon forms. It was no longer a simple origin energy mirror image, but a materialized weapon forged from pure essence. However, an ugly woman's blue shield was still effective. The steel claws rained down on her, and many of the attacks landed on her shield. The shield was as solid as a rock, and there was not even a flicker of light on its surface. However, an ugly woman's heart kept sinking. Although she was fine, Ding Ming himself had not moved. She was always on the receiving end of attacks, but he was always at ease, waiting for the exhausted enemy. What she did not know was that Ding Ming was not as happy as she had imagined. Although AIG's technique was powerful, the Sun Divine technique consumed too much energy. The energy absorbed by the vortex was far less than the energy expended. The essence of the smelting space poured out like a flood, including the tens of billions of origin energy he had absorbed from Ross on the first day. In just 5 minutes, all of it had been depleted. Ding Ming was already injured. Now that he was forcefully using the divine technique, the consumption was even greater. At the end of the day, the Sovereign King's technique was the most profound existence in the universe. Using it as an interstellar martial artist was like using electricity to drive a starship to open a space-time tunnel. How could this work? In theory, it would work. However, the problem was that it could not be sustained for long. Over time, the starship would lose its power and crash into the four-dimensional space. Therefore, if this continued, even if an ugly woman was defeated, Ding Ming would be exhausted until he was nothing more than an empty shell. By this time, the ugly woman had been tortured to the point of fear. She stood on one leg, and her whole body flew up into the sky again. It would have been better if she did not fly. At the same time, Ding Ming also appeared in front of her in a miraculous flash. An ugly woman was extremely shocked. She was most proud of her speed, but how did Ding Ming's speed suddenly increase by several times? This speed was not similar to a flash like the transient step. The transient step allowed one to teleport to a designated location. It looked like the signature move of the Lightspeed system. However, there was a huge problem with the transient step. This was because there was no straight line between 2 points. It was purely a jump between 2 points. The martial artist would not know what happened in the middle of the jump, what they experienced, or what obstacles or changes there were. However, Ding Ming's dash was based on his true speed. If there were any changes along the way, he would be able to deal with them. To put it bluntly, a true expert would not use tricks to take shortcuts. Everything was based on basic skills. This was the other secret technique of the Fiery Sun Divine technique, Thunderstorm. The second origin vortex would directly increase one's speed, allowing one to flash to the enemy's side with the force of a thunderbolt. Bang! There was a muffled sound in the sky. Ding Ming directly punched an ugly woman's blue shield. There was nothing special about this punch. It was purely the punch of a person's cultivation base. Ding Ling! The shield shattered. The mist-like shield turned into countless specks of light that scattered in the sky. However, the penetrating shockwave from the punch was released at the same time. An ugly woman was sent flying backward, over 100 meters away. This punch had caused her internal organs to be in discomfort. Her divine devil origin had actually dimmed by more than half. This showed just how ferocious the Fiery Sun Divine technique was. While she was flailing around in the air and trying to adjust her body, her pupils contracted. This was because Ding Ming had flown out and chopped down with his hand. The distance between them was still a little far, so an ugly woman still had plenty of time to prepare. She had already raised her demonic sword and forcefully gathered energy to block the attack. She was confident in herself, and her ancient sword technique would definitely win. However, what she saw was the complete opposite of what had actually happened. The hand seemed to have separated from Ding Ming's arm. The shining hand seemed to have turned into mist. An ugly woman's expression was also a little dazed. She could not see what had actually happened. This was because the hand had suddenly turned into a colorful butterfly. She had never seen such an enchanting butterfly. Perhaps it was no longer a butterfly, but a dancer dancing under the stars. That posture, that charm, that style, once you saw it, you would never forget it. Not good. An ugly woman also felt a great danger descending. This butterfly flew randomly in the air. Every time it flapped its wings, a colorful halo would envelop her. She felt as if she had been sucked into a space-time tunnel. In this tunnel, countless colorful rays of light that had materialized swept out. They were like vortexes, torrents, flowing clouds, and even nebulae. She was like a speck of dust placed in the middle of the universe. How small was she? An ugly woman felt as if a blunt knife was cutting her flesh with every ray of light. The inhuman pain was unbearable. An ugly woman could not take the pain anymore. She raised her head and screamed to the sky. Around her, the light blue shield of gods and devils gradually reformed. She had to use all her strength to block Ding Meng's attack. The secret technique of the Ardent Sun Divine Technique, Flash Forward, used the Sovereign's mark to launch a strong attack. Ding Meng could also feel that an ugly woman's foundation was unprecedentedly deep. This was his first time facing such a strong opponent. He gritted his teeth and pushed his palms forward. The bewildering butterfly disappeared, and it instantly transformed into a silver divine eagle. With a swoosh, it swept toward the opposite side. Looking from the ground, a straight Milky Way could be seen in the sky. An ugly woman's true body could no longer be seen. A light pupil appeared where she was. With a whoosh, it expanded to the size of a starship. Then it shrunk with a whoosh. Bang! An earth-shattering sound rang out as the pupil of light exploded. Large amounts of light waves rolled out in all directions. The entire space trembled incessantly. It gave people the feeling that this place was about to collapse at any moment. An ugly woman was blown away from the light pupil. She fell to the ground like a kite with a broken string. No matter how many defensive techniques she used, she could not block such a dazzling and domineering attack. An ugly woman fell heavily on the beach with a plop. Her protective steel armor was shattered without a trace, revealing a frail and skinny body. The devil sword had also left her hand and was floating by the water. She did not choose to recall it. Instead, she kept crawling backward. Sky blue blood kept flowing out from the corner of her mouth. After crawling for a short distance, she finally could not hold on any longer. She raised her head and spat out a large mouthful of blood. The blood was like a flower blooming in the depths of the darkness. Chapter 882. An ugly woman was leaning against a huge rock on the beach, gasping for breath. Her breath had been weakened by more than half, and her injuries were far more serious than Ding Meng's. She could not run now, because Ding Meng had slowly walked up from the sea and was less than 50 meters away from her. At this distance, Ding Meng could kill her with a single stretch of his hand. How did you dual cultivate the power of gods and demons? Ding Meng stared at her. An ugly woman coughed violently, her chest heaving up and down. Ahem, have you finally realized that the power of the demons is not inferior to your power of the gods? She knew that Ding Meng would ask her this question, and it was indeed related to a secret. The entire subspace was still shaking. Ding Meng stared at her coldly. I can choose not to know. This decision is up to you. The ugly woman sneered. If you know, I'll die too. If you don't know, I'll just die later. Since I'm going to die anyway, I think it's better if you don't know. Ding Meng nodded. All right, I will send you on your way. An ugly woman suddenly said, that Princess Mao Xing has been following you all this time, right? Otherwise, you would not have been able to go from an ordinary person to an interstellar warrior in such a short period of time. Ding Meng's raised hand suddenly dropped. It would be a lie to say that he was not surprised. This was supposed to be a secret, and he did not expect an ugly woman to know about it. Looks like you don't want to die yet. Ding Meng's face darkened. Ahem. An ugly woman was also bleeding from her nose. There are a total of 5 groups of people who escaped from Mao Xing, and they are all members of the royal family. Which 5 groups? Ding Meng quickly asked. An ugly woman said, the princess who has been following you is not a member of the royal family. She's just like Lin Fei, a fake. This piece of information was really shocking, but Ding Meng's expression remained unchanged. What about the other 4 groups of people? An ugly woman said, the faction I belong to is the real royal family. She is the real princess of the Pearl people. She has been protecting the land of entropy and the Holy Palace for many years to avoid being discovered by the demons. Ding Meng said, but all of you have been infected with the demon's energy. An ugly woman smiled. I don't blame you if you don't understand. The Divine Light and the Demon Realm are one family. The Divine Light warriors have big flaws. If you hadn't performed that strange technique, do you think you could have defeated me, a Divine Light warrior? Ding Ming could not help but say, but you are a human. An ugly woman said, so what? You have been modified, so why can't I be modified as well? Ding Ming suddenly realized that there were too many mysteries and too many secrets regarding Mao Xing's clues. Perhaps even Little Rascal and the others did not know everything. Aside from you and me, who are the other 3 groups of people? An ugly woman suddenly revealed a strange smile. That's all I know, and I guarantee that this is all the truth. If you don't believe me, you can ask that exquisite beauty over there. She is definitely one of the forces of the other 3 groups. Ding Ming turned his head and glanced over. Ji Chenxue was still lying unconscious in the grass. Just as he turned his head, he suddenly sensed that an ugly woman's body was emitting some kind of origin energy fluctuation. By the time he rushed over, it was already too late. A blue beam of light suddenly descended from the sky and enveloped an ugly woman. An ugly woman turned into a stream of white light and was directly sucked away by the beam of light. An ugly woman was obviously very intelligent. She had purposely revealed this information to Ding Ming so that she could buy time to escape. Ding Ming rushed forward to take a look. He discovered that there was an inconspicuous 3-pointed star symbol under the rock. This was clearly an accurate coordinate. An ugly woman had been transported away by some kind of powerful teleportation device. However, Ding Ming was not disheartened. An ugly woman's combat strength had decreased, but if he really wanted to kill her, he still needed to put in a lot of effort. The essence chi in his body could not withstand a large amount of torment. At least, he could not afford to engage in a fierce battle. Seeing that the subspace was about to close, Ding Ming rushed to the grass in the distance. He waved his hand and sucked Ji Chenxue up. He gently hit her neck with a karate chop. Ji Chenxue immediately woke up. Ding Ming, are you okay? Miss Ji, can you walk? Ding Ming asked with concern. There was still Zhong Yalan in grass. Ding Ming could ignore her, but he had to take Ji Chenxue, a divine light martial artist, with him. Ji Chenxue was still seriously injured. The bloody hole in her waist had not completely healed. Her blue dress had long been dyed purple by her blood. Even walking was a problem for her. Ding Ming did not say anything. He picked her up and flew directly towards the shuttle ladder. Ji Chenxue was a little embarrassed, but she did not care. She knew that Ding Ming was saving her. Did you kill an ugly woman? The door was closed. The shuttle ladder began to move upwards again. Ding Ming said, I can't kill her. Let's leave before she meets up with Wenyang. We can't stay in this apocalypse building any longer. This hidden front number 2, an ugly woman, was already difficult enough to deal with. Who knew how powerful Wenyang was now? What was worse was that this was the headquarters of Apocalypse Group. Who knew how many more powerful martial artists these large corporations had? Perhaps they did not have a martial artist like an ugly woman, but Ding Ming was not stupid enough to think that Apocalypse Group did not even have a warlord-level origin ability user. If more than 10 beginner warlords came, then he and Ji Chenxue would be doomed. Ji Chenxue let go of Ding Ming and slowly straightened her body. It's okay. I have my power on the ground. As long as we successfully reach the parking lot of Apocalypse Building, even the head of state can't do anything to us. The parking lot of Apocalypse Group's headquarters was also late at night, but it was as bright as day. Ji Chenxue's bodyguard team was indeed standing guard. The 4 luxury cars were also parked in the center. Seeing this group of bodyguards, Ji Chenxue let out a long sigh of relief. They were finally safe. However, when she took the first step, she felt Ding Ming's hand grab the hem of her skirt. If this was any other time, she would definitely explode. However, right now, Ding Ming looked at her bodyguards with a frightening expression. Don't go over. It's a trap. Ji Chenxue was suddenly stunned. She finally realized what was wrong. Her bodyguards were a professional team, and they were arranged for her by the internal congregations of Beidou. Usually, they would respectfully wait for her in 2 rows, but right now, these 10 or so people were lined up in a row, giving off a threatening aura. Sure enough, before Ji Chinxue could speak, the leading bodyguard in a suit shouted, "How dare you? Let go of Ji Zong." Ding Ming could only let go. No matter what, it was not appropriate for a man like him to grab a woman's skirt in public. Ji Chinxue explained, Tian, Mr. Ting is not an outsider. Calm down. Tian was usually very respectful to her, but this time, he actually took the initiative to interrupt her. Ji Zong, we have received an order from the supreme congregations of the 3 great sects. We need to report this to you. What order? Ji Chinxue felt that something was wrong. Tian's expression was still mild. Ji Zong, the order we received is like this. The congregations want you to stay at the Apocalypse headquarters and not come back. If you want to leave the Apocalypse building, please go back immediately. We will wait here and ensure your safety. If you need, you can also bring us in. Now, the Apocalypse group has lifted the ban and allowed the 13 of us to enter freely. Ding Meng sighed. I told you, he planned everything before he came. Naturally referred to Wen Yang. Wen Yang had arrived at the capital of planet Nua before Ding Meng. This 1 month was enough for him to plan a lot of things and make sufficient preparations. Even the Beta group had asked Ji Chinxue to return to the Apocalypse building. This meant that the Beta group also agreed to her marriage with the head of state. Wen Yang really had a backup plan. Ji Chinxue could not help but ask coldly, what if I don't go back? Tian's expression changed and became cold. Ji Zong, the second order we received is that if you refuse, you will no longer be the CEO of the Beta group. We will use force to take you back. He paused and continued. Ji Zong, you have always treated your brothers and sisters well. We don't want to make a move on you. Please cooperate. Ji Chinxue said angrily, Are you rebelling? You dare make a move on me? We don't dare. Tian lowered his head. But the interests of the congregations are above everything else. You and I can't be above the congregations. Ji Chinxue suddenly calmed down. Since the congregations want to remove me, who will be the successor? Tian said, It will be your sister, Ji Chinyu. This news will be announced on the Empire's public channel in 10 minutes. Ji Chinxue sneered. Good guy, I never thought that Ji Chinxue, will be betrayed by my own people one day. Tian said, The congregations have given orders. Ji Zong, as long as you stay in Apocalypse, everything will be fine. This is the president's guarantee. He also said that the head of state can also protect your safety. Ji Chinxue was very angry. She had fallen from the altar all of a sudden. She had fallen even faster than Wen Yang. Losing the position of the Beidou Group CEO meant that she was nothing more than an abandoned pawn. Wen Yang would definitely marry his sister. His big plan had to be realized. I have to go back. Ji Chinxue felt that he had never been so angry in his life. Ji Zhou, I'm sorry, Tian said quietly. At this time, Ji Chinxue could feel that Tian's origin energy fluctuations were rapidly increasing. It was obvious that he was preparing to take action himself. Tian suddenly raised his head. There was a complicated look in his eyes. He looked at Ji Chinxue and then looked at Ding Meng. Suddenly, he took a step forward and rushed forward. Ji Chinxue was currently seriously injured and weak. He could only place his hopes on Ding Meng. However, at this crucial moment, Ding Meng stood still. Was this the legendary straight man's thinking? As long as it didn't concern him, he would just let it go? Ji Chinxue helplessly closed his eyes. Who would have thought that Tian would suddenly kick off halfway and turn around in midair? He actually used both of his palms to send out 2 thick fire dragon images toward the bodyguards behind him. Then he used all of his strength to shout crazily, Boss, run, run. Before Ji Chinxue could react, Ding Meng grabbed her and quickly summoned his wings of light to fly into the night sky. Chapter 883. When Ji Chinxue opened her eyes, all she could see was a sea of fire in Apocalypse Square. It was a mess. At the critical moment, Tian had sacrificed himself to buy time for her to escape. She wanted to take a few more glances, but Ding Ming was flying at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the huge Apocalypse headquarters had become as small as a grain of rice. Ji Chinxue seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes could not help but redden. Ding Ming said, "That guy called Ation is not bad." Ji Chinxue was a little sad. "He might die." Ding Ming asked, "What's his name?" Ji Chinxue asked, "Are you interested in him?" Ding Ming sighed. "He's very loyal to you. There are very few people like him in this world nowadays." Ji Chinxue also nodded. "His name is Tong Tian. He's the son of my housekeeper, Uncle Tong. He's always been very good to me. He's been with me for 8 years." Ding Ming laughed. "He should be very fond of you." Ji Chinxue asked, "You can tell?" Ding Ming said, "When he was about to betray me at the last moment, he glanced at me. I knew he was hinting for me to take you away." Ji Chinxue sighed slightly. Tong Tian was indeed her admirer, but Tong Tian's status was much lower than hers. Therefore, he had always hidden his feelings in his heart and did not express them. He only sacrificed himself at the last moment to buy time for her to escape. At this moment, Ji Chinxue realized that Ding Ming was not flying towards the outskirts of the capital. Instead, he was rushing straight into the atmosphere, as if he wanted to fly into space. "If you keep flying like this, the space station will soon track us down," Ji Chinxue reminded him. Ding Ming smiled and said, "To tell you the truth, I've already sensed at least 20 different radar signals locked onto me." Ji Chinxue immediately understood. If Ding Ming had followed his request and landed in the private base in the city, he would have been discovered even faster. The reason was simple. Once he rejected the congregations, the experts from Beidou would take the initiative to attack. If he flew into space, he might still have a chance. Ding Ming suddenly asked, "What are your congregations?" Ji Chinxue sighed and said, "It's the congregations formed by the 3 major martial arts sections. It's similar to the board of directors of the Beta Group. It has the right to make decisions on the important matters of the group." Ding Ming said, "Isn't it the same as the Empire's parliament?" Ji Chinxue said, "It's about the same." Ding Ming said, "It looks like there's no point in you being the president." Ji Chinxue said, "I'm no longer the president, okay?" Ding Ming said, "It's good that you're no longer the president. I'm just afraid that you'll become a highly wanted criminal in the Empire." Ji Chinxue was stunned. Does Wenyang really dare to do that? Ding Ming smiled. Is there anything he can't do? Ji Chinxue was speechless. She realized that Ding Ming was right. Wenyang had abandoned his first wife, eliminated all of his rivals, and was even ruthless to his former friends. He was indeed capable of doing anything. To be precise, once a person reached the position of the head of state, they would become cruel and ruthless. Just as she was thinking, the exquisite watch on her left hand suddenly vibrated, and a small screen popped up. There was only a short line of words on it. Coordinates: 76T, 9, 2500, 31N, 906. We can only wait for you for 3 minutes. Who sent this? Ding Ming couldn't help but ask. Ji Chinxue said, "It says it's anonymous, but not many people know my private contact number." Ding Ming said, "It looks like we have to take a gamble." At this moment, even Ji Chinxue could feel the light in the sky behind them. There were at least 20 skywalkers in the sky, and it looked like they were here to encircle the two of them. Ding Ming's wings of light were not flapping at this moment. Instead, they were pulling out an illusion and diving forward. 1 minute later, Ji Chinxue finally saw it. In the vast night sky, there was a very small white dot. If you didn't look carefully, you would think that it was a star. Only a master like Ding Ming had sharp senses, and he rushed toward the white dot without hesitation. Gradually, the white dot became bigger and bigger. It was a complicated light beam that was made up of many dots, lines, and surfaces. It was about the size of a house. This was the unique technology of the Federation. It was a precise long-distance transmission. However, the transmission technology of the Empire was not like this. In other words, this transmission was made by the Federation. At least, it was not a trap set by the Empire. Ding Ming grabbed Ji Chinxue and dived into the light beam. The light beam immediately disappeared. The next moment, the energy of the light beam gradually disappeared, and the vision gradually returned to normal. Ding Meng found that the two of them had been transported to an extremely spacious command center. Countless light screens were running in an orderly manner. 3 large screens were floating in the center of the command center, and dozens of staff in uniforms were working hard. Ding Meng said, "This is the mothership of the Federation's patrol fleet, right?" A lazy voice came from the side. "You have good eyes. You actually know that this is a military starship." Ding Meng turned around and saw a handsome middle-aged man sitting on the sofa in the lounge area. This man was wearing a well-ironed military uniform, and the insignia on his chest showed his noble status. Major General. Ding Meng definitely did not know this person, but he knew the woman in uniform standing behind a Major General. She was the military general who discovered his whereabouts on Thousand Sails Planet. Lu Ting. "It's you guys." Ding Meng was a little curious. The Major General stood up, and his face darkened. Ding Meng, a Class A wanted criminal of the Holy Grail Federation. The military has the obligation to arrest him. Take him down. Ding Meng was amused. Although he was injured and his body was weak, he was not someone who could be taken down by military personnel like you. You were no match for me when I was on Thousand Sails Planet, and it was even more impossible for you to be my match now. Lu Ting knew how powerful Ding Meng was, so she quickly explained, "Mr. Ting, welcome back to the Federation." A gentle voice came from the door next to them. "All right, Haodong, stop fooling around." A group of people came out, led by the transit string, followed by Jin Xiaoyan and the 2 bodyguards. Obviously, Ding Meng's rescue was ordered by the transit string. However, Haodong was not happy. "Xing Xian, you're really something. This kid is a wanted criminal." The transit string smiled. "Haodong, Ding Meng is a citizen of the Holy Grail Federation. We can't just watch him die under the gunfire of the Empire spacecraft, right?" Haodong was happy when he saw her smile. "All right, I'll listen to you. You're always right." Ji Qinxue could not help but look at Ding Meng. "You're really something. You're a citizen of the Empire and a citizen of the Federation, and you're also a wanted criminal on both sides." Ding Meng spread his hands and said, "That's why my life hasn't been easy either. It's true that you're capable to have so many identities." Ji Qinxue walked towards the transit string with gratitude in his eyes. "Xing Xian, thank you so much for this." The transit string smiled and said, "Qinxue, you're welcome. I just happened to run into Officer Lu's patrol fleet and realized that you were in a bad situation, so I helped you." Ji Qinxue might only believe half of these words, but Ding Meng would never believe them. With the transit string's steadiness, how could she not leave a way out? Ding Meng could imagine that the transit string would not have been obstructed when she left the Apocalypse headquarters. If Wen Yang dared to do anything to the transit string, it would not be a personal grudge, but an international dispute. If they were not careful, it would trigger a war between the 2 countries. Wen Yang would not do such a stupid thing. After the transit string walked out of the Apocalypse building, she definitely did not go to the space station, but directly to the military fleet. As for how the transit string knew that they were in trouble, the closest thing to the truth was that the transit string must have planted spies in the Empire. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to know so much about what happened in the Apocalypse Square. At this moment, the transit string turned her head and said seriously, "Haodong, what happened to Ding Meng on Qian Fan back then was actually a misunderstanding. Shouldn't you remove his name as a wanted criminal?" Haodong frowned. "Xing Xian, this is not something that I can make the decision on." That was an order from the higher-ups. The transit string stared at him and revealed her signature smile. "But you have a way, don't you?" Haodong could not resist this smile. He could only scratch his head and say, "I'll try my best, but I can't guarantee the results. However, you have to take the pressure from Sheng Hao's complaints." The transit string smiled even more happily. Her smile had a special characteristic, and that was that the more she smiled, the more radiant she looked. Ordinary men would have a hard time resisting her charm. Men of steel were not ordinary men. So Ding Ming thought to himself, what the hell is this transit string doing? She's actually trying to do me a favor. However, Ding Ming did not have a good impression of the transit string, but he did not hate her either. The transit string did not play the role of the bad guy in all the disputes with Sheng Hao and Xing Hong. On the contrary, she had been actively coordinating with them. Also, it was worth noting that the transit string had a good relationship with Lan Bing. Sure enough, the transit string finally spoke. Ding Ming, I have just sent the news of your arrival to President Lan. I believe she has also left the Empire. Ding Ming said, thank you so much this time. The transit string hurriedly waved her hand. You're welcome. If you hadn't asked me to leave first, I wouldn't have been able to come back here alive. She had seen Wen Yang defeat Lin Fei with her own eyes. With her intelligence, she naturally judged that this was a very secretive coup in the Empire. It was best to stay as far away from this kind of thing as possible. Moreover, she must not speak about it, otherwise there would be a lot of trouble. The transit string looked at Ji Chunxue's disheveled appearance. She turned her head and said, Xiaoyan, is the room ready? Please ask Ji Zong to rest. Jin Xiaoyan immediately stepped forward. Ji Zong, please come with me. As soon as Ji Chunxue took a step forward, he was suddenly stopped by Ding Ming. Wait, what about me? Jin Xiaoyan said sweetly. Of course, Mr. Ting's room is also ready. Ding Ming waved his hand. I don't need my room. Ji Zong and I will share a room. Jin Xiaoyan was stunned. Well, in her impression, Ding Ming was not such a vulgar and boring person. However, Ji Chunxue replied generously. It's okay. Mr. Ding Ming and I will share a room. It's okay. Seeing Jin Xiaoyan leading the two side by side to the main passage, Hao Dong was also a little surprised. This guy is really good at flirting. Many women in the Federation have relations with him. But this time, even the most beautiful woman in the Empire has been seduced by him. Ling Xingxian smiled and didn't say anything. She thought that Ding Ming wouldn't be so bored. The two of them definitely had something to talk about. Otherwise, they would be risking universal condemnation if they ate too much. A man and a woman alone in a room. Chapter 884. The room prepared by the transit string was very luxurious. At least for this patrol fleet, it was quite good. It was a large suite for 2 people. It had a living room, a large bedroom, and 3 cabins. The living room was minimalist. It was filled with simple but practical facilities. It was obvious that this was a room that only military officers could use. The sofa in the center was replaced by a small multi-purpose console. The screen on the console showed the real-time motion of the fleet. It could be seen that this special class fleet was currently cruising around the entire Federation. Their current position was in the southern region, which was close to the K system, which was the galaxy where the Dead Silent Star was located. However, judging from the route, the fleet would go around the Jifan system. According to Jin Xiaoyan's explanation, the patrol fleet would leave Ding Ming and Ji Chunxue in Meteor City. After all, their identities were too special. If they entered the Federation on a military starship, it would cause trouble. Ding Ming had a lot of enemies in the Federation. The transit string at Xing Hong still had the right to speak and could mediate for him. However, Shang Hao's family would not let Ding Ming go so easily, especially Yuan Jie. After studying the console for a while, Ji Chunxue walked out of the bathroom after taking a shower. Although Ding Ming did not know what women usually carried in their anti-gravity handbags, he knew that clothes, accessories, and makeup were indispensable. At this moment, Ji Chunxue was dressed in a white shirt, light-colored casual pants, and wet hair. His outfit was very simple, but the curves of his body were fully displayed. He gave off a pure and beautiful vibe. When the two of them met before, they were still polite. However, now that they knew each other was a divine light martial artist, they did not feel distant. At least for Ji Chunxue, no matter where she lived, no one of the opposite sex had ever entered her room. Ding Ming was the only one. Moreover, Ding Ming did not seem to want to treat him as an outsider. The kid had gotten a big box of peanuts from the crystal freezer and was munching on them on the sofa. Ji Chunxue couldn't help but laugh at his chewing. You have a good attitude. Ding Meng said, "It'll be a waste if I don't eat it. Miss Ling, you should compensate me." Ji Chenxue was curious. "Compensate you?" Ding Meng sighed. "I was almost beaten to death by her big sister back in the fertile chalk galaxy. If it wasn't for the divine light energy, would her big sister have been able to escape?" Ji Chenxue sat down on the sofa. "I've also been looking for the divine light energy. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it." Ding Ming asked, "Where did you get this necklace?" Ji Chenxue fell into deep thought. After a long while, he asked, "How old are you this year?" Ding Ming said, 36 years old. Ji Chenxue laughed. "Do you know how old I am?" Ding Ming looked at her from head to toe. "You can't be younger than me, right?" Ji Chenxue blinked and laughed. "Don't be surprised if I tell you. I'm the same age as you." Ding Ming was immediately amused. He stopped chewing on the peanuts. "The divine light necklace helped you grow up?" Ji Chenxue said, "The Ji family has 5 siblings. I'm the 4th. My parents have been very strict with me since I was young. They want me to become a singer in the future. What I do every day is practice my voice." Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh. It's hard to imagine that in the Norse Empire, there are parents who don't want their children to cultivate martial arts. Ji Chenxue said, "I've been weak and sickly since I was young. A data expert once analyzed that my chances of becoming an origin ability user are very small. Thus, my parents want me to pay attention to my appearance and become a singer so that I can become the face of the Ji family in the future." Ding Ming looked at her again. "With your appearance, it wouldn't be a problem for you to become the face of the empire." Ji Chenxue said, "But you don't know. It's very boring." Ding Ming asked why. Ji Chenxue sighed slightly. "Since I was young, I've been taught how to stand, how to sit, how to bite on chopsticks, how to match clothes, how to eat, how to play polo, how to ride, how to play golf, how to socialize, how to learn encyclopedic knowledge, and so on. Apart from that, I've been practicing my voice every day." Ding Ming sighed inwardly. No wonder Ji Chenxue looked like a noble. Her temperament had been cultivated since she was young. She was a true member of a wealthy family. Others couldn't learn it. "It's indeed very boring." Ding Ming agreed. "Then what about you? Were you like this when you were young?" Ji Chenxue was obviously very interested in Ding Ming. Ding Ming smiled bitterly. "I'm completely different from you." "What's the difference?" Ji Chenxue asked. Ding Ming's gaze fell into the distance. "At least you didn't have to worry about food and drink. But I was often hungry. Sometimes I had to fight with other children for a bag of noodles. Sometimes I even had to steal or rob. Even when I was better, I had to chop firewood, cut grass, herd sheep, and hunt. That was indeed a period of suffering, but it was also an exciting past, because suffering always motivated people to work hard, and faith always inspired people. The legend of the hero, Dagger, never disappointed those who respected it. Thus, Ding Ming's gaze carried a hint of nostalgia for the past. But I was a little better than you. At least I had freedom." Ji Chenxue sighed. "When I was young, my biggest wish was to go out for a walk. Unfortunately, my parents didn't allow it. I only had one chance to go out every year, and it was only for one day. I couldn't even leave the capital." Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. "Then what's the difference between that and going to jail?" Ji Chenxue smiled bitterly. "There's really no difference. That's why I tried my best to go out. When I was a little older, my family allowed me to go out for 3 days. Later on, they allowed me to leave the capital. But every time, I had to be accompanied by Butler Tong." Ding Ming asked, "Then where did you go?" Ji Chenxue said, "Planet Noroxing 7, also known as Planet Field. Do you know that planet?" Ding Ming nodded. This was an eco-tourism planet that the Empire had only recently developed. In the past, Planet Field was somewhat similar to the Poison Hazard planet. The environment was complex and the vegetation was lush, but there were no living creatures. Many experts believed that Planet Field had toxins that made it impossible for living creatures to survive. Of course, this theory was later refuted. Ji Chenxue said, "I've liked to enjoy the scenery since I was young. That place became my happiest place." Ding Ming smiled. "Your interests are quite unique." Ji Chenxue revealed a serious expression. "When I was 10, I went to Planet Field again during the summer vacation. There, I met a savage. Savage? Ding Ming's interest was piqued. What kind of savage? Ji Chinxue said she should be a woman. She had very long hair all over her body, so I couldn't see her face clearly. When I first saw her, she was sitting cross-legged on a big tree, resting with her eyes closed. Ding Ming pondered and said, I'm afraid she was cultivating? Ji Chinxue nodded. I didn't dare disturb her. During the camping trip, I left a bunch of my favorite snacks under the tree and left. Ding Ming did not say anything. Ji Chinxue continued. After that, I would see her every time I went out to play. Every time, I would leave a lot of delicious food for her. I felt that she was really pitiful, so I decided to leave a lot of clothes for her. This went on for 4 whole years. Ding Ming asked suspiciously, she was cultivating all this time? Ji Chinxue said yes. Later on, I became familiar with her. Although she never spoke, I always felt that she was very amiable. She wasn't as dirty as she seemed on the surface. Sometimes, when I was wronged, I would run under the tree to talk to her. Ding Ming said, she never came down from the tree? Ji Chinxue said, and she never spoke, but I felt that she could understand everything I said. Ding Ming laughed bitterly. That's really bizarre. Ji Chinxue said seriously, when I was 16, I had my coming-of-age ceremony. My family was preparing to send me to the Imperial Planet to study music. I ran to Planet Field to say goodbye to her, but that time, she came down from the tree and gave me a bag of wild fruits. Ding Ming frowned. Wild fruits? Ji Chinxue said, I only ate one before I fainted, and I was unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke up, I discovered that I had awakened origin energy, and the origin was abnormally strong. Ding Ming came to a realization. What you ate was probably the precious Ling Qing Shan, and the origin of your origin energy should be the diamond astral art. Did she transform you? Ji Chinxue nodded. It was then that I was pleasantly surprised to discover that I could absorb origin energy without the induction cabin. Ding Ming said, that is indeed the advantage of the divine light martial artists. Ji Chinxue said, but I knew that this kind of thing was too scary, so when I returned home, I had to use the induction cabin to cultivate. Ding Ming couldn't help but sigh. No wonder you were so strong. So it was because of the Ling Qing Shan. Now, all the inexplicable mysteries had finally been explained. Ji Chinxue's situation was the same as Ding Ming's. First, he had been transformed by the Ling Qing Shan, awakened his telekinesis, and then cultivated the diamond astral art. His strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Ji Chinxue said, I can't compare to you. You have control over a huge amount of divine light energy, but I don't. I only have pure origin energy. Ding Ming nodded. Naturally, he could see that. In the battle between Ji Chinxue and an ugly woman number 2, Ji Chinxue had indeed displayed the martial arts of a human origin energy user to the extreme. However, this couldn't be compared to an ugly woman number 2, who was an interstellar martial artist who cultivated both divine light and devil light. It was normal that he couldn't win. Ji Chinxue said, it wasn't until I was 20 years old that I went to see her during the winter break that she finally spoke. Ding Ming was curious. What did she say? Ji Chinxue said, she said that she was going to leave and that she would never see me again. Before she left, she gave me her necklace. Ding Ming's gaze fell on Ji Chinxue's white neck. Is it this divine light necklace? Ji Chinxue said, she told me that this necklace belonged to General Miao Xing and that it had a very powerful absorption and conversion ability. She said that I had to take good care of it and use it wisely. Ding Ming was really curious. Didn't she tell you where she was going? Ji Chinxue shook his head. I don't even know her name, and she was never willing to tell me. She only told me 2 things. One of them was to search for divine light energy, and the other was that after she left, if I saw a martial artist who could use pure divine light energy, I had to look for Princess Miao Xing's whereabouts and protect her with all my might. Ding Ming said, the name of the princess that she asked you to look for, was it Ariel? Ji Chinxue was shocked. How did you know? Ding Ming smiled bitterly. He really didn't know where to start. He could only answer, Because I know where the princess is, and I was sent by the princess. Ji Chinxue was stunned. Chapter 885. Ding Ming suddenly used his telekinesis and created a model of a tree in the middle of the room. He used the model to establish a telepathic link with Ji Chinxue. Unfortunately, Ji Chinxue could not connect. Ding Ming smiled bitterly. Although that senior taught you the Mao Xing technique, she did not teach you any telekinesis. Ding Ming could not help but transmit his telepathic thoughts directly to Ji Chinxue. Both of them were martial artists of divine light, and their understanding of the techniques and telekinesis was instantly understood. The telepathic link was quickly established, and both sides chose to exchange the memories of the Mao Xing divine light martial artists. Ji Chinxue finally understood that Ding Ming was telling the truth. You really are one of the princess's men. Ji Chinxue was overjoyed. Ding Ming said, Unfortunately, I do not know the senior's name. Perhaps only Little Rascal and the others can explain this matter. Ji Chinxue said, It is indeed a pity. I do not know where the senior has gone. I have tried my best to find out all these years, but I have not been able to find her. Ding Ming revealed a thoughtful expression. Perhaps she is already dead. Ji Chinxue was shocked. How could that be? Ding Ming analyzed. Think about it carefully. When the Mao Xing people came to our main star system, they existed as spirits. They had to wait for energy to awaken, to evolve into a human form. They had to rely on powerful red crystals of true essence. Isn't that how the princess evolved? Even now, the princess does not dare to reveal her whereabouts so as to avoid being discovered by the demons. However, that senior has already taken form and can openly cultivate on planet field. Even the radar on the capital space station cannot detect her. This means that the senior has awakened very early. Her strength is already very high, at least higher than ours. Then the question is, why did she teach you the Mao Xing technique? Ji Chinxue hesitated. Perhaps I was a little naive when I was still a young girl. This is definitely not the reason. Ding Ming immediately interrupted her. Miao Xing would never reveal Miao Xing's secrets so easily. Even if it's a coincidence, there's still a question that's hard to explain. Senior has already taken human form. Why would she give you such an important piece of equipment like the Divine Light Necklace? Ji Chinxue also felt that Ding Ming's analysis was reasonable. It was like if you were a peerless master who also had a divine weapon. Why would you give it to a stranger? Wouldn't it be better to keep it for protection? This didn't make sense in the eyes of martial artists, because this was a foolish act of lowering one's own combat strength. Ding Ming said, I have 3 guesses. First, Senior knows where the princess is, and she is rushing to meet up with the princess. However, 16 years ago, I had not arrived at the dead silent star, and the princess was still in hibernation. She had not fused with me. So the first reason is eliminated. Ji Chinxue said, What about the second reason? Ding Ming said, Second, Senior must have found out about the existence of Miao Xing's ruins, and she is rushing there. This is very likely, but this doesn't explain why she passed on the technique to you and gave you the equipment. Ji Chinxue's face darkened. I have a rough idea of the third reason. She must have been discovered by the demons, or she knew that she would be facing a strong enemy when she went to find Miao Xing's ruins. She knew that she couldn't win, so during those 4 years, she passed on the technique to me and gave me the necklace, hoping that I would inherit Miao Xing's legacy. Ding Ming sighed. She must have stayed on planet field for many years, and the only human she came into contact with was you. Furthermore, you treated her well during those years, and she had been secretly observing you. She felt that you weren't a bad person, so she completed the legacy. This was a choice that had no other choice. Ji Chinxue was a little sad. I only hope that Senior is still alive. Ding Ming said, Can you let me take a look at your necklace? Ji Chinxue hesitated for a moment, but in the end he still took the necklace off his neck. As soon as the necklace was in Ding Ming's hands, the divine light imprint on Ding Ming's face was immediately activated. The necklace also seemed to faintly flash with a white light. At a glance, it was obvious that there was some kind of mysterious connection between the two items. Ding-Ming carefully sensed the equipment. He quickly learned how to use the necklace. Unlike the other divine light components, the necklace was also focused on support and defense. It could create a shield and plating layer in a critical moment, and at the same time, it was an energy-absorbing artifact. How should he describe it? It was like a materialized, smelting space. Even if the wearer did not use origin energy, it could still spontaneously absorb the surrounding energy. However, there was a problem here. It could only absorb divine light energy, but could also convert divine light energy into other types of energy. In this aspect, it was far inferior to Ding-Ming's diamond star-fusing art. It seems that Senior didn't teach you the high-level Mao Xing technique. Ding-Ming sized up the necklace. When you fought with an ugly woman from the hidden front, the diamond shield you created didn't have very strong fluctuations. Now, there's only a little bit of energy left in it. What's going on? Ji Qinshu sighed. I'm ashamed to say this. I've been searching for clues about divine light energy in the Mao Xing ruins all these years, hoping to inject energy into the necklace. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find it. The only bit of divine light energy left in this necklace was infused when I went to the Federation. Ding-Ming was surprised. When was that? Ji Qinshu pondered for a moment before saying, when I was 28, the congregations recommended me to be the president of the Beidou group. A year later, as the president of Beidou, I was invited to visit the capital of the Holy Grail Federation, Saint Splendor City. Strangely enough, there was no divine light energy in the necklace. However, when I left Saint Splendor City, I was surprised to find that the necklace had spontaneously absorbed a bit of divine light energy. Ding-Ming said, "Are you sure this abnormal phenomenon happened while you were in Saint Splendor City?" Ji Qinshu nodded. Absolutely. Before I left the Norse Empire, I inspected the necklace during my last cultivation session. Ding-Ming's eyes flashed. It seems that I have to go to the capital of the Federation this time. He returned the necklace to Ji Qinshu. When Ji Qinshu took it back, she found that Ding-Ming had injected a lot of divine light energy into the necklace. She estimated that there was at least a few billion divine light energy in it. She said in surprise. Ding-Ming nodded. You are badly injured. You can treat your wounds when you reach the Flying Star City. Ji Qinshu's beautiful eyes flashed. Thank you so much. Ding-Ming waved his hand and said with a smile, You don't have to thank me. We are on the same side. Ji Qinshu felt a surge of warmth in her heart. Perhaps only the warriors of the divine light would be so selfless. If it were someone else who would give you a few billion divine light energy that was close to that of a mid-level battle saint. However, this also proved that Ding-Ming's strength was truly terrifying. He didn't feel any heartache when he gave her a few billion divine light energy. Ji Qinshu smiled again. Actually, when I visited the Federation last time, I already got in touch with the transit string. I know that the Star Rainbow Group is also looking for divine light energy. They have more information about the Mao Star ruins than we do. Ding-Ming nodded and said, 6 or 7 years ago, it was Ling Xingqi who fought with me over the super crystal on Poison Dragon Star. I knew that the Star Rainbow higher-ups had a big plan to develop a new energy source, but I didn't expect them to be so focused on it. Ji Qinshu said, After I came back, I have been searching for information about this. However, there are too many things for the group and the congregations. My energy is limited. Ding-Ming suddenly asked, Does Chuan Yu have any information about this? Ji Qinshu's expression became complicated. Chuan Yu is a giant organization that works with the military to search for all kinds of energy sources in outer space. I don't believe that Guan Xinxing doesn't know about this. Even if Guan Xinxing doesn't know, he should at least have heard about divine light energy, right? Ding-Ming said, So you went to the officials' banquet a month ago. Ji Qinshu smiled bitterly. I don't know how much you know about Guan Xinxing. That old fox is too cunning. He didn't mention a word about it. Beidou Group and Chuan Yu rarely interact. I could only visit them in my personal capacity. Her face suddenly turned red. Everyone knows that Guan Xinxing loves money, but that's not the case. He is even more lustful. Oh, Ding Ming was a little surprised. I've never heard of him having such hobbies. Ji Chinchua shook his head helplessly. The Federal Empire has a beauty ranking. More than half of the top 10 beauties in the empire have an unclear relationship with him. Ding Ming smiled meaningfully. I think it's not a day or two that he's been thinking about you. Ji Chinchua said disdainfully. That's impossible. What kind of person does he think I am? Does he think I am one of those women on the beauty ranking? That's true. Ding Ming also agreed. Ji Chinchua had beauty, family background, and power. In other words, a beauty of this level could only be looked up to by ordinary people. Even the new elites in the rich and powerful sects could not be compared to her. Of course, in the face of Ji Chinchua's beauty, Ding Ming thought to himself, others might not be able to, but I definitely have the qualifications. However, this thought was quickly destroyed by the straight man's one-track mind. I'm guessing that Ling Xingxian came to the Empire to find you because she wants to borrow the Big Dipper Corporation's power. She's one of the most remarkable women I've met. Ji Chinchua nodded and said, I also find it strange. Xinghong and Beidou have almost no interaction except for the Star Wars International League. What's more, the Star Wars International League is just a small part of Xinghong's business. However, she came to me this time. She definitely didn't come to you for the business of the group. She must have another purpose. Ding Ming did not say this out loud. Instead, he said coldly, unfortunately, you are no longer the president of Beidou. She still wants to leave us in the Flying Star City. Ji Chinchua understood what he meant. If she was still in charge of Beidou, the transit string would invite her to Xinghong as a guest. Since she was no longer the president, she did not have much value. Business dealings had always been like this. Everyone cared about benefits. Moreover, you had to thank the other party for helping you at a critical moment. However, Ji Chinchua was quite optimistic. It's okay. I just unloaded a huge burden. It's rare for me to go on a long trip. Just treat it as a vacation. I have heard of the Flying Star City many times. It is said that the scenery there is very beautiful. This time I can go sightseeing. Ding Ming was speechless. Among so many divine light warriors, which one of them did not try their best to absorb and cultivate? Only a weirdo, like you, only wanted to enjoy the natural scenery. Ji Chinchua's next words made Ding Ming even more speechless. With a master like you accompanying me, my safety will be guaranteed. I can relax and play. Chapter 886. Flying Star City remained the same. Blue skies, blue seas, birds chirped, flowers bloomed, and flowers bloomed. This was a fairy tale-like world. The villas in the eastern suburbs had long been cleared out by the Skywolf Corps. The reason was simple. The Marshal had ordered them to do so. Now, the Federation was in the outer space of the southern border, and the Surprise Attack Corps was a first-class corps. Yin Fengwei was not qualified to compete with the Marshal at all. The Marshal was also dressed in a formal suit. After receiving Xinjia's notice, he had been waiting at the apron of the villa for a long time. However, the luxurious flying car that he had imagined was nowhere to be seen. This was because Ding Ming and Yin Fengwei had flown directly from the sky using a military flying backpack. Ding Ming did not want to show off his wings of light so that it would not be too shocking and frighten others. However, even if he wanted to keep a low profile, the Marshal was still stunned by Ji Chinchua's beauty and could not come back to his senses for a long time. Brother Ding, the Marshal greeted him respectfully. Is everything ready? Ding Ming asked. The Marshal said, according to Brother Jia's instructions, this area has been cleared. You can choose as many rooms as you want. The starship is also ready. If you want to enter the Federation's territory, you can set off at any time. Ding Ming was a little surprised. So soon? The Marshal nodded affirmatively. I've checked the official website repeatedly. Your arrest warrant was canceled 5 days ago. It's confirmed. Ding Ming secretly thought that the transit string was really resourceful. That guy named Haodong was also very capable. He had canceled his arrest warrant in such a short time. All right. Thank you for your hard work. You can go do your work. I'll stay here for a while. He stayed in Flying Star City to recover from his injuries and regroup with the others. After all, Xinjia and the others had caused a huge commotion in the Empire. They needed some time to withdraw the main force. Ding Meng's injuries were non-existent. What he needed was energy. However, Ji Qinshu needed to rest quietly. She said that she wanted to enjoy the scenery, but in fact, she had basically locked herself in her room to cultivate quietly after moving into the villa. Once these two people started cultivating, they couldn't stop at all. It wasn't until 10 days later that the marshal led everyone into the courtyard. Even though Ji Qinshu was already mentally prepared, she still noticed Little Rascal and Little AI in the crowd at a glance. These two people were too outstanding in terms of appearance and temperament, especially Little Rascal. Although she was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans and looked like a lively female student, the divine aura she exuded was so pure that it could only be Miao Xing. This time, almost everyone was present. Xi Jia, Ding Wenhe, Ding Meng, Jun Ling, Lan Bing, Meng Yin Su Xia, Dai Yi Eisendale, Lu Qing, Liang Yi, and Su Lingwei. Behind the crowd were Yao Manru, for eyes, and Mao Zi. What surprised Ding Meng the most was that there were a few familiar faces: Elephant, Little Arrow, Qin Qin, and so on. You? Ding Meng was surprised. Jun Ling stepped forward with a smile. Boss, Sister Xiao AI brought them over from the God War Starfield. Elephant and Little Arrow immediately rushed forward. Brother Ding, we missed you so much. We're finally here. Liang Yi also stepped forward, but his voice was like water droplets. Ding Meng, look at me. Am I strong enough now? A water droplet floated out from under Liang Yi's feet. It flew into the air and suddenly transformed into a valiant human figure. He, Ding Meng, I haven't seen you in 7 years. You? Ding Meng was shocked. Senior Fujinzhen? This voice was indeed Fujinzhen's, but it quickly changed. Little guy, do you still remember me? Hee, I can't call you little guy anymore. You're now the famous god of war Ding Meng. Ding Meng was stunned. Senior Shuiyu Mountain, what's going on? The water droplet smiled proudly. Brother Feng, Uncle Blood, and I have successfully merged into one. How is it? Do you still think I'm weak? Damn, you've merged the strengths of 3 families into one. You're really strong. Su Lingwei sneered. So what if you're strong? You still have to obediently return to the bowl. Without Sister Yi, you're nothing. The water droplet transformed again and burrowed back into Liang Yi's boots. Seeing this group of people greet each other as if it was nothing, Ji Qinshu was dazzled. He wasn't dazzled by this group of beauties. He was shocked by their auras. Apart from a few people, these people were all warriors of the Divine Light Division. Most of them were above the God of War level, especially Lan Bing and Dai. Their auras were strong and their foundations were deep. They seemed to be no weaker than him. Of course, Xinjia was always the first to make sarcastic remarks. He couldn't help but laugh. I really envy you. Ding Meng was puzzled. What do you envy me for? Xinjia looked at Lan Bing. Sister Bing said that you encountered a strong enemy in the Empire and that you were in great danger. I almost believed her. You're really something. You went to the capital of planet Norland and hooked up with the goddess of the Empire. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. You have a rich imagination. Ji Zong and I are just friends. He suddenly turned his head and said, Ji Zong, let me introduce you. This guy is Xinjia. The introduction of Xinjia, 4 Eyes, and the others was still acceptable. However, when it came to introducing Dai Ilan Bing and her entourage, Ji Qinshu's eyes widened. Ding Meng said, yes. Ji Qinshu still couldn't believe it. The 4 of them are your wives? Ding Meng didn't need to answer this time. Dai Yi stepped forward. Yes, we are. Ji Zong, what do you think? Ji Qinshu smiled bitterly. Forgive me for being ignorant, but the Empire is monogamous. Lu Qing said, but this is the Holy Grail Federation. Even the God Wars galaxy, Ding Meng can marry as many wives as he wants as long as he's strong enough. Eisendale immediately jumped out. Yes, but he has to be able to afford it, Xinjia joked. Don't make it difficult for him. With his current ability, he can't even afford to raise me, let alone you guys. The four-eyed man immediately jumped up. Brother Ding, please raise me. I'm cheap. 1 pack of Jinfu Rong every day is enough. The Russian next to him kicked him down. You uncultured thing. That's Hibiscus King, not Jinfu Rong. You idiot. The girls covered their mouths and laughed. Ji Chinxue couldn't help but laugh. Xian Jie wasn't joking. Ding Ming's wives were all beautiful, but they were all first-class experts. To raise such a group of beauties, it would take an astronomical amount of resources. Only a rich man could afford it. Lan Bing stepped forward and politely extended her hand. Ji-zone, please come in. The group quickly sat down in the hall on the first floor of the villa. Ji Chinxue took off his necklace and respectfully handed it to Little Rascal. Little Rascal studied the necklace and didn't say anything for a long time. Everyone in the room looked at her. After a long time, Xiao AI sighed. This is the divine light necklace of Star General Rong's wife, Xinglan. Senior Xinglan is also one of my Star General Miao. This was the first time Ji Chinxue had learned the name of the senior who had taught her the divine light necklace. Little Rascal nodded. I didn't think she would pass the necklace to you. Ji Chinxue was very respectful to Little Rascal. Senior Xinglan instructed me to follow the princess's orders. Little Rascal sighed. Ding Ming's analysis is correct. The Star General may have already died in battle. Back then, the two generals had protected her as they fled. Unfortunately, General Rong had died in battle, but Xinglan had survived and even cultivated a human form. The twists and turns of this story were unknown. Little Rascal returned the necklace to Ji Chinxue. Keep it. Since the Star General passed it to you, you're also one of the chosen ones. Also, you don't need to call me princess. Just call me Little Rascal. After all, I've already cultivated a human form. Ji Chinxue could only put the necklace back on his neck. Xian Jie clapped his hands and said, Ding Ming, we've actually gathered here today because we have an important decision to discuss with you. Ding Ming was curious. What decision? Xian Jie turned his head and said, Let Big Sister Bing explain it to you. Lan Bing said with a serious expression, With everyone's current cultivation speed, they've all reached their respective bottlenecks. Furthermore, the construction of the base requires even more energy. We're currently lacking in energy. To be more precise, we're in dire need of it. Ding Ming nodded. This was also the reason why he had been running around for so long. Lan Bing said, However, it's not realistic to rely on you alone. Everyone should work together and develop energy through multiple channels. Only the more complicated and troublesome problems can be left to you. Therefore, I've discussed this with Miss Eisen, and we've decided to establish a proper company to operate. Big Sister Little Rascal and Big Sister Xiao AI have also agreed to this idea. Ding Ming fell in a deep thought. I see he was good at fighting and killing, but he was an idiot when it came to management. Xian Jie smiled. You don't have to worry. Big Sister Bing and Big Sister Xia used to be CEOs, so they have experience. Miss Liang used to be the vice president of the Water Cherry Club, so she also has relevant management experience. Annie Yao, Big Sister Wenhe, and I can provide technical and field support for the company. Ding Ming and the others can also escort everyone. Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, You all have a division of labor. What about me? Eisendel quickly said, You'll pay for it. Ding Ming was immediately amused. So, you guys are eyeing my wallet? How much does it cost to start a company? Ding Ming asked carefully. Lan Bing said, That depends on what scale the company is going to be. Xian Jie said, My opinion is that it should be a comprehensive international trading company that focuses on energy development and also takes into account mechanical manufacturing, biology, materials, space network technology applications, entertainment, etc. Ding Ming said, Sounds like it's going to be a big one. Xian Jie said, It definitely won't be small. The initial estimate is this amount. He held up 4 fingers. Ding Ming asked curiously, For billion? Xian Jie's eyelids also drooped. For billion isn't even enough for Auntie Yao to build a prototype for you. Ding Ming sighed. All right, I'll pay 40 billion then. No. Xin, Jia hurriedly said. What can you do with 40 billion? Your prince and frog battle armor costs hundreds of billions. It'll cost at least 400 billion. For 100 billion, Ding Ming immediately jumped up. He had worked so hard to earn 400 billion in the Beta Casino. If he threw it all away, wouldn't he be back to square one? Forget it. I'll take care of you, four-eyed Russians. Let's make a deal. 1 pack of Minghongshan and 1 pack of Wangfu Rome a day. Nothing more. Chapter 887. This discussion lasted for about an hour, and Xin Jie finally managed to convince Ding Ming after much persuasion. Ding Ming currently had a total of 450 billion star coins in his private stash, and he reluctantly took out 440 billion star coins. Xin Jie stared at him. What's the point of keeping 10 billion star coins? To lay eggs? Ding Ming mumbled. I'm keeping some money for self-defense. These words almost made everyone faint from laughter. Did you, Ding Ming, need money for self-defense? I'll inject 200 billion into your company. Ji Chenxue suddenly said. Xin Jie turned his head and said, It seems like Ji Zong has an idea. Ji Chenxue smiled. Don't misunderstand. I'm quite optimistic about Ding Ming's company. I'm willing to invest some money to become a small shareholder. Does anyone have any objections? As for the operation, it's better for Mrs. Ding to handle it personally. Her words were directed at Lan Bing, making it clear that she had no intention of interfering in the company's affairs. However, it was impossible to say that she didn't have any ideas. She couldn't return to the Empire for the time being, and the Beidou Group's marriage with the Apocalypse Group might seem huge, but the Empire's financial groups still couldn't compare to the large financial groups in the Federation. If they developed well in the future, they would undoubtedly be her backing. Lan Bing also smiled. Ji Zong is too kind. Whether or not we can develop is still unknown. It's inevitable that we'll be ostracized. It was easy for Ding Ming to establish a company, but if he wanted to develop it into a large financial group, he would have to ask the big brothers like Sheng Hao and Xing Hong if they agreed. Ji Chenxue smiled again. Actually, it's quite easy to develop. This year is a good opportunity. Xin Jie said, What opportunity? Ji Chenxue said, This year is the 50th anniversary of the Interstellar Combat League. Everyone should know about the Interstellar Combat Carnival, right? Not only did he know about it, but he had also heard about it many times. The Star Wars League was an entertainment show jointly organized by the Federation and the Empire. Although it was an entertainment show, every 5 years there would be a carnival, which was the Fengyun gathering of origin ability users. For those true experts, they disdained to participate in this kind of entertainment. However, the carnival was held better and better each year. By the 5th carnival, it was unprecedentedly grand and attracted many experts from the Federal Empire to participate. It was officially renamed the Fengyun Conference. The Fengyun meet reached its peak in the 8th session because it implemented a prize pool system. This prize pool was very interesting. It was based on the accumulated fees from the viewership ratings, sponsors, offline activities, and so on. The prize pool's prize pool was undoubtedly an astronomical figure. It would give out rewards according to your results. The 8th season's prize pool had accumulated a generous reward of 6 billion renminbi. The champion of that season was won by a guy with the ID National Adonis, and the champion's prize was 8 billion renminbi. This sum of money was just a drop in the ocean for a real rich financial group. However, for an individual, it was a considerable amount of wealth. At the very least, you could buy a lot of rare cultivation resources on the darknet. Secondly, the officials would give out mysterious gifts. The 8th Carnival's gift was said to be a strange stone from outer space, which had a very good healing effect. For top experts, this was something that couldn't be bought with money. In fact, the real attraction of the Fengyun meet was its inclusiveness. Top experts could show off their best skills here, and at the same time, they could also see the results of other experts' cultivation over the years. Even if ordinary experts couldn't enter the Hall of Fame, they would still have a considerable return. There were all kinds of middle and lower level participants. There were all kinds of entertainment stars, eye-catching, and advertising effects. The economic benefits were indescribable. Due to the success of the 8th Feng Yun meet, the 9th Carnival's prize pool had directly exceeded 20 billion renminbi, and the number of mysterious gifts had also increased to 3. In fact, it was quite a coincidence that the 9th Carnival was held just as Ding Ming was fighting on Thousand Sails Planet. At that time, all the experts of the Shanghai Starry Rainbow Group were participating, and there weren't any real experts participating. Otherwise, Ding Ming would have been dealt with by the Shanghai Corporation. When the 9th Feng Yun meet was held, even the frontline war zones in the Fertile Chalk system had a tacit agreement to stop fighting for a month. This was because the Swallowing Frogman Kingdom was interested in watching this event, and they also hoped to gather information about the experts of the Federal Empire from the participants of the Feng Yun meet. In short, this was an event where everyone was celebrating, and its significance was extraordinary. This year happened to be the 10th Feng Yun meet, and it was very memorable. Based on the scale of previous Feng Yun meets, this one would definitely be unprecedentedly grand. If one wanted to make money from this event, this was the most direct way to make money. Ji Qinxue smiled. If everyone here participates, I estimate that you will get a large share of the tens of billions of RMB reward. I want to participate. Junling was the first to raise her hand. She had been training for several years, or more accurately, her hands had been itching for several years. She was extremely bored and had long wanted to fight. I want to participate too. Me too. I have to go. Elephant, Little Arrow, Four-Eyed Harry, and the others rushed to raise their hands. There's so many rewards. Even I am tempted. Ding Ming smiled. The Feng Yun meet had a very good mechanism. The arena was in a special server provided by the International Space Network, and the participants could choose to show their real faces. For those rookies or celebrities who wanted to become famous, this was undoubtedly a huge opportunity to show their faces. However, the participants could also choose to remain anonymous and change their appearance to participate with a completely new identity. The participants' information was encrypted, and the server was personally designed by the famous Master Lin Kejia to ensure fairness and privacy. Little Rascal said, Ding Ming, there is no problem for you to participate, but before that, you still have to make a trip to the capital of Holy Splendor. Ding Ming understood what she meant. The reason for the Divine Light Necklace's automatic energy injection must be investigated clearly. Xinjia explained, now we have to split up into several groups. Everyone do your best. The first group was naturally led by Little Rascal, Xiao AI, and Four-Eyed Harry, Meng Yin, and the others. This would definitely be sent back to the V-12 base, and the matter of the black handprint and the hidden front would naturally need to be investigated by them. The second group was led by Lan Bing, and the location of the new company was set in the Azure System's Blue Pole Star City. Because the headquarters of Shanghai Xinghong and the other big shots were in the capital, they wanted to avoid competition as much as possible. At the same time, Lan Bing had to represent Ding Ming to meet with the Du family and try her best to persuade Liang Iran to join them. With the backing of the military and the Red Moon Group, at least Shanghai Xinghong would not dare to act recklessly in the open. The third group was led by Junling. This group of steel women and alloy men headed to the outer space planet Beidou with no other purpose than a rope and Long Feiyu and the other interstellar traders. They would beat up anyone who was not convinced, including the Hubel's family on planet Beidou. Junling, Elephant, Little Arrow, Little Leopard, and Qin were enough to sweep through half the sky. The fourth group was led by Liang Yi, accompanied by Lu Qing, Su Lingyue, and Water Droplet. The purpose of this trip was to search for all kinds of heavenly treasures in the devouring world. With the friendship between Ding Ming and the immortal Yuan Queen, the devouring world would probably not interfere. Moreover, with the return of Shuiyu Mountain, Lung Yin would definitely be very happy. In addition, with Zhang Zhuiyue's knowledge, their new company would definitely sell good goods from the devouring world in the future. This would definitely be unique in the Federation. The fifth group was led by Dai. They were also heading to Blue Pole Star City. This trip was to recruit people. At the very least, the major research institutes, factories, and design buildings had to be set up. Only then would authoritative experts like Ding Wenhe and Yao Manru be of use. The last group was naturally led by Ding Ming. Their destination was the capital city, Saint Splendor City. With Ding Ming and Ji Qinshue's current identities, they would not be able to cause much trouble if they went there. However, with Isendale leading the way, it would be different. The Rainbow family had heard too much about Ding Ming over the years. As the sect master, Isendale's grandfather really hoped that Ding Ming could visit as Isendale's boyfriend. After these discussions were decided, the marshal began to arrange for the starships to help with the transportation. After most of the people left, only Ding Ming, Xianjie, Ji Qinshui, Isendale, and the others were left in the courtyard. I should have gone with you, but the Black Handprint has been making a lot of moves recently. I could only choose to go to the Empire to lie low for a while, Xianjie explained. Ding Ming was curious. They can actually force you to lie low? Xianjie's expression was a little heavy. You don't understand the world of red hackers. The Fifth Lord is both good and evil. We have fought many times on various major platforms. I feel that their influence is not below that of the Hidden Front. Back then, in order to find out about you, I also promised to visit the Chu family as a reward for Miss Chu. Ding Ming asked, "How is Miss Chu now?" Xianjie frowned and said, "Based on the information I have, Chancellor Wenyang is about to restart the battle plan against the fertile Chalk Star system in the second half of the year. The Congress is impeaching many veteran generals led by Ross. At the same time, the Congress has made an exception to promote a young military general led by Miss Chu. Miss Chu is currently a lieutenant general. She controls a large number of troops and has great power. In the next 3 months, she will return to the front lines to command the battle." Ding Ming smiled bitterly. What was Wenyang thinking? Xianjie faced Ji Qinshui. "Miss Ji, you might not be too happy to hear what I have to say next." Ji Qinshui smiled. "Go ahead." Xianjie said in a low voice. "There is no news of Zhong Yalan. Your bodyguard, Tong Tian, has been severely injured and is now imprisoned in the Ji family's dungeon. The Beidou group announced the marriage between Ji Qinyu and Chancellor Wenyang 3 days ago, but this news was not announced on the public channel. Furthermore, the date of the engagement ceremony has not been set. Given your current situation, my personal advice is that you should not return to the Empire for the time being. The time is not ripe yet. Why don't you travel around the Federation for a while and make your next move when things take a turn for the better?" Xianjie, thank you for telling me this. Ji Qinshui was still smiling. "I am indeed very disappointed in the congregations. However, I will personally take back the debt they owe me one day." She paused again and looked at Ding Ming and Isendale. "However, I will still have to rely on Mr. Ding Ming and your wife's help." Isendale actually did not have a good impression of Ji Qinshui. This was because Ji Qinshui was so beautiful that even women would be jealous of him. Along the way, she was accompanied by Ding Ming. Any man would inevitably be attracted to her. However, Ji Qinshui was the successor of Star General Mio and a true warrior of divine light. He was not like her, who had only recently joined the family, so she could not say much. However, she thought that Ji Qinshui was a great threat. Unexpectedly, Ding Ming's gaze was fixed on her waist. Isendale immediately jumped far away. "You want my handbag again? No way." Chapter 888. The Holy Grail Federation's territory was not as vast as the Norse Empire's, but the Federation's advantage lay in its talents and technology, especially when it came to talents. The Federation implemented a strict and harsh hierarchical system, typical of which was the division between citizens and refugees. Similarly, the 5 habitable star systems of the Federation were naturally the most populated places: Beauty, Happiness, Azure, Clear, and Holy Splendor. The capital, Holy Splendor City, was located on Holy Splendor's planet. The people of the Federation were used to calling this planet the Holy Planet. It was the most standard terrestrial planet, with 9 planets orbiting around a sun. From space, The holy planet looked like a beautiful azure planet. 90% of its surface was covered by water, and only 10% was land. The capital of Holy Splendor was different from the capital of Planet Norse. Planet Norse's main city was still within the scope of a steel jungle, but Holy Splendor City was a perfect blend of modern technology and minimalist nature. For example, there was a 20-story office building built on a hillside. It was not the traditional square shape, but a perfect combination of various shapes like building blocks hidden in the mountains and lakes. At first glance, it looked very high-tech, but also very warm and harmonious. It had truly achieved the integration of technology and nature. Looking at the capital of Holy Splendor, there were such buildings everywhere. Of course, it was not that there were no functional areas, but they were all very carefully planned in various parts of the city, displaying a variety of uses. In Holy Splendor City, you could see any style of scenery you could imagine. Furthermore, Holy Splendor City was twice the size of Planet Norse, accommodating a huge population of nearly 20 billion people. It could be said to be the Federation's most central main city. Ji also had a permanent special pass from the Federal Empire, so he smoothly passed through the Skynet space station. The Rainbow family's shuttle ship was already waiting for him. After boarding, it flew straight to the residential area in the southern suburbs. This area had the best living conditions in the entire Federation, and it was also the residential area where high-ranking officials and rich families gathered. On top of a majestic mountain range, there was a large area of multifunctional villas with different styles built. The scenery was picturesque, and it was near the mountain and the sea. Today, Eisendel was in high spirits. She had changed out of the black exploration armor she was used to wearing and had changed into a light-colored woman's suit with a lapel. She had also specially put on some light makeup. She looked less decisive and murderous and more feminine. This was Ding Meng's first time visiting the Rainbow aristocratic family, so he naturally had to pay attention to etiquette. Ding Meng naturally knew Eisendel, and Eisendel. Eisendel was the eldest brother. He was mainly responsible for the trading manager of the Rainbow Paradise. Eisendel was a warrior with decent strength, but he had participated in the Star Wars League. He was the main attacker of the Firebird Club under the Sheng Hao group and was very famous in the Star Wars League. Eisendel was one of the executives of the Starbao group and was highly valued by the Ling family. Ding Meng also knew from Eisendel that her brothers did not play together with her. Everyone had different interests and hobbies. Usually, they would only gather when Grandpa Xia summoned them. Their relationship was very weak. Ding Meng noticed that when he walked into the hall, not many people stood up from the sofa. They were chatting happily, as if they did not notice him at all. However, many men in the Rainbow family stared at Ji Qinxue with strange expressions. Ding Meng was secretly amused. Ji Qinxue had learned the assimilation spell from him and used his telekinesis slightly. It was normal that these people did not recognize him. But now, anyone can enter Rainbow's house. Someone on the sofa suddenly said. Eisendel could not help but frown. The person who spoke was Eisendel. Her cousin was the direct descendant of Ling Xingwen in the Starbao group. Ding Meng was on the blacklist of the two ladies in the Starbao group. Needless to say, Eisendel's position was decided by Eisendel's, but Eisendel said mockingly, "Since when can a wanted criminal come here?" Hearing this, everyone was silent. Eisendel was a little angry. "What nonsense are you talking about? Ding Meng's wanted order has been cancelled." Eisendel sneered. "Sister, so you also know that he is wanted. That proves that he has a criminal record. Aren't you afraid of damaging your father's reputation by choosing such a person to be your boyfriend?" Eisendel was not willing to admit defeat. Is it fun to be Ling Xingwen's henchman? Ding Meng only needs to lift a finger, and even Ling Xingwen has to kneel down obediently. How can he be judged by you? Eisendel was also annoyed. Manager Ling is a person of status. "Sister, pay attention to your words." Ji Qinxue suddenly transmitted a telepathic thought to him. "It seems that you're not very popular." Ding Meng smiled. "I have many enemies in the Federation. This is normal. Ji Chinxue said, rich families have always been like this. The insiders are always not very harmonious. Get used to it. Haha. Ding Meng did not care about Eisendel's behavior. Women were good at quarreling. At this moment, Eisendel and Eisendel were busy quarreling. Suddenly, a dignified voice came from outside the door. Quarreling as soon as you come back. When will you stop quarreling? More than 10 years ago, Ding Meng had piloted the Starship expedition into the wormhole. If it had not been for Ding Meng's fearless sacrifice, who knew how many innocent citizens would have been swallowed by the water droplets? As for the feud between Ding Meng and the several large consortiums, it was not within the scope of his responsibility. With his status, it was not appropriate for him to talk about these things. After the atmosphere in the hall returned to normal, Ding Meng and the other two set up an invisible psychic model to facilitate private communication. This time, Eisendale was the first to ask, Miss G, did you know my uncle before? Ji Chinxue smiled. Yes, when I was received by the vice president, it was Officer Xia who received me. He was basically with me the whole time. Ding Meng's interest was piqued. Then where exactly did you go? Ji Chinxue said, the trip was a total of 7 days. At first, I went to the General Affairs Building of the Federation. Then, I went to the Frost Building of the Xinhong Group's headquarters, the Dream Star City of the Shenghao Group's headquarters, the Scenic Fairy Mountain in the north, and finally the Xiaolin Science and Technology Research Institute. It was all a cursory tour. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Ding Meng asked, what about the people you met? Were there any special people? Ji Chinxue said, no, because I came here on behalf of Chancellor Wenyang. Wenyang has always advocated for maintaining a peaceful relationship with the Federation. When I came to the Federation, I only had preliminary contact with the heads of these large consortiums. As for special people, I did not meet any of them. Eisendale asked, could the problem have come from the Shenghao Group's headquarters? Ji Chinxue smiled. I don't think so, because I only went to the private offices of Yutian Lin and Ling Zhixing. Ding Meng pondered and said, what about the Xiaolin Science and Technology Research Institute? Eisendale quickly explained, this research institute is very famous. It is the research institute of Master Lin Kejia. Ji Chinxue smiled. It's a pity that I did not meet Master Lin in person that time. I only symbolically visited the research institute and did not go in. I only wandered around the courtyard outside for a while. Ding Meng suddenly said, is there any way to meet this famous person of the Federation? Eisendale and Ji Chinxue looked at each other. Was Ding Meng suspecting Lin Kejia's research institute? This time, it was Eisendale's turn to smile bitterly. Ding Meng, you may not know, but meeting Lin Kejia is more difficult than meeting the president. Ding Meng was a little puzzled. Why? Eisendale sighed. She is a national treasure of the Holy Grail Federation. She is also a grandmaster. Not only is she famous, but she has also devoted her entire life to scientific research. Even if the president wants to meet her, he has to see if she has the time. My good granddaughter, did you get any treasures for Grandpa this time? His preference for Eisendale was obvious. His smiling expression made him look like a kind elder, and his attention was all on Eisendale. The grandfather and granddaughter pair didn't treat the other people in the hall as people at all. It was as if they were air. The two of them were still whispering by the stairs. Xia Zhuan kept nodding, his expression satisfied and happy. Xia Ming couldn't stand it anymore and coughed lightly. Old man, Ding Meng, and Ji Zong are here. This time, Ji Chinxue was the one who was ignored. Only then did Xia Zhuan raise his head, revealing a pair of sparkling eyes. Ah, he is indeed a good lad. My granddaughter has good taste. The others looked at each other. Owens was even more puzzled. Ding Meng was a little powerful, but his status was not enough. He had even offended Shenghao Xinghong. Ding Meng also smiled. Hello, old man. Xia Zhuan looked at Ding Meng as if he had found a treasure. Ha ha, Ding Meng, good kid. You did well in the battle on Thousand Sails Star. Ding Meng was surprised. Old Master knows about it too. Isendale said sweetly. Ding Meng, although Grandpa doesn't usually go out, he knows more about the outside world than I do. Xia Yuan slowly walked over, his face full of pride. Xia Feili, Su Mingling, these people are all second or third-rate characters. Normally, they consider themselves as the Federation's experts. Haha, when would the title of expert belong to them? They don't even deserve to be called experts. If these words were said by someone else, others might think that he was crazy, but Ding Meng didn't think so. This was because in his perception, Xia Ziyuan's strength was unfathomable. This person was comparable to Hidden Front Number 2's, an ugly woman. In some aspects, he was even better. It was hard for him to imagine that there was such a top existence among the human race. Furthermore, Xia Ziyuan had already extended his bony hand towards Ding Meng. Ding Meng, welcome to this old man's house to play. However, this time, Ding Meng stood in place without moving. Just by smelling this fragrance, her brain suddenly felt unprecedentedly clear and comfortable. Ding Meng's expression changed. He was a War God-level origin ability user, yet he was able to produce such an effect just by smelling its scent. From this, it could be seen that this fruit wasn't some common meal, but an extremely rare heavenly treasure. Sure enough, after eating the fruit, his origin energy flowed more smoothly. Even if he only used a third of his origin energy, he could feel that he could absorb the origin energy in the air at a much faster rate. The origin energy he absorbed also cleansed all the major cells in his body. He did not expect this fruit to have such a miraculous effect. Ji Chenxue obviously also felt the benefits. Old man, what kind of fruit is this? Isendale said sweetly. This is the aqua root peacefulness fruit. It was nurtured by the Empire's special divine wood with the help of the Federation's advanced technology. It can accelerate your origin energy absorption and can also double the energy conversion. It is a pure, natural enhancement for multi-elemental cultivation. Even Grandpa is reluctant to take it out. Ding Meng suddenly understood. When he first met Isendale, she was already very strong. It turned out that she had such a divine fruit at home. No wonder her cultivation progressed so quickly. Xia Ziyuan waved his hand and said, It's nothing special. Just treat it as a greeting gift from this old man. Ding Meng said, Thank you, old man. Xia Ziyuan smiled and said, I've heard about you many times. You're so young, but you're already so capable. I've been hoping for you to come to my place for a long time. Today, you're not the only one here. My little friend Ji is also here. I just happen to have a collection that I want you to help me identify. Ding Meng secretly thought that he had not eaten the aqua root peacefulness fruit for free. However, this was normal. After eating other people's good stuff, it was only right to help them. Xia Ziyuan fiddled with a row of goods for a while before taking out a small gray sword hilt. I bought this at an auction 2 years ago. I only know that it's a lightsaber, but I can't grasp how to use it. This question was directed at Ji Chenxue. Ji Chenxue took the sword hilt and examined it carefully. Her expression was surprised at first, but it slowly became serious. After a long time, she asked, How much did you spend, old man? Xia Ziyuan raised 3 fingers. 30 billion. Ji Chenxue sighed. Old man, this money was well spent. Xia Ziyuan said, What do you mean? Ji Chenxue said, If I'm not wrong, this lightsaber is called Qi Shao. It's said that it used to be the weapon of a famous person in the Federation. When show you. Xia Ziyuan said, How do you know? Ji Chenxue smiled gently. This sword is different from ordinary lightsabers. Ordinary lightsabers are powered by electricity. Although the internal structure is precise, the range is limited.